we'll go ahead and we will get started right now. And so I want to welcome everybody to the virtual multifamily summit. Glad that you are here, and glad that you're with me today. We have a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of stuff, and I think you're going to find what we're going to cover is going to be not only, I think, pretty interesting, but it's really going to kind of depend on where you are on your learning curve in terms of multifamily. So, for example, I know some of you that are participating today. I know some of you are have some multifamily experience. I know that. I know there are others of you that do not. I know some of you have been active investors. I know some of you have been passive investors. I know some of you are kind of wondering if this is something you really should be thinking of doing, especially right now. So we're going to cover some things today, and I think you're going to walk away from the time we spend together today feeling pretty good about whether you decide that multifamily is something that you want to really be involved in more or not. At the end of the day, I think that you will you'll walk away with much more informed and be able to make some pretty good informed decisions moving forward. And so let's go ahead and let's get started. We are having the Multifamily Summit in tour, and as I said before, I am excited to go over this with you. And let's talk about some housekeeping items first, okay? Before we start jumping into the subject matter of everything we're going to cover. First of all, the first hour and a half is going to be mainly information that I'm going to be sharing with you. So it's going to be me pretty much talking. I'm going to be going over a PowerPoint with you, covering what I think some pretty key points that, as I said before, I think is important to know and understand. So we're going to talk about that. That'll be about the first hour and a half of what we're going to do together. And then the second hour and a half will basically be actually less than an hour. The second is going to be now you're going to be looking at some apartment communities that we are going to take a look at. Now, we've already done the looking of these communities. So in other words, it's not as if I've got a camera crew ready to go and you're going to follow us around, like they do on, I don't know, like HGTV or something like that. We've already gone through the process of doing this, and so you're going to see the results of that on our property tour. I totally invite you, and by totally, I mean really, invite you to at least stick around and make sure you check out that property tour. Because a lot of what we're going to go over in our first hour is going to be good information, I think. But the rubber really meets the road when we go on that tour. The items I'm going to cover, the items that we're going to discuss, the things I'm going to be pointing out to you regarding some of our multifamily communities, I think are super important. And it really does, I think, a service to you in terms of understanding and putting a lot of the stuff we're going to talk together, really the first half of this, and really putting it together after that, and again, feeling much more confident in what you may or may not want to do in the near term or long term when it comes to multifamily, and really help your decision making. All right, so that's number one. Number two housekeeping items is, as you can probably tell, and if you've been with me for a while, I'm a pretty informal guy. So this is also going to be informal. So if you need to get up and take a break, if you need to go do something, fine. I am recording this, and you will be getting a recorded access to the recording. So in the event you've got to check something out, something comes up, you need to hit the restroom, you need to get a fresh cup of coffee, whatever, you'll be able to go back and check it out at a later time, because I'll get you access to the recordings. And the number three, in regards to being informal, I pretty much take our time together like I do when people come for the live event. Okay, so what you're getting today is really the same exact thing that investors have gotten when they come to the live event here. And we do the live events probably about 6 to 7 times a year. So you're getting the same thing. The only difference is, instead of you sitting in one of our apartment community clubhouses where we do have the event, I mean, you're sitting at home or maybe even at your office. But everything else is pretty much the same. And that's pretty much how I'm going to operate this one as well. Just like I would if we were in person, talking with each other, same kind of thing. Okay? And so before we jump into the information I want to go over with you, I want to just briefly talk about my story. And I'm doing this because I know a lot of you are familiar with me. I know some of you have been with me for quite a while. But I also know that there's a few folks that have not. I know that there's a few folks that have not been with me for a while. And so we're going to go ahead and we're just going to discuss just a few things here. First of all, I am considered one of the top multifamily real estate experts in the U.S. Now, this is not my ego talking or anything, folks. This is just the way that it is and the way things have evolved for me and being involved in multifamily over the last going on 30 years. I'm known in many places, in many circles, amongst the folks that I hang out with, the business folks. A lot of them call me the paranoid banker, and some guys gave me that name years and years ago. Even though I'm in the real estate business for the most part, I'm known as the paranoid banker, and I'll get to the reason why that is, and how that came to be. But I was, my father left me before I was born. I was forced to live with my mother, grandparents, and uncle in a small 2-bedroom home. I did manage to go to college on a football scholarship. And so I'm telling you that just so you know I started with nothing. And this is not me just, patting myself on the back and all that stuff. I think it's important for you to know a lot of what I'm going to be talking with you about. A lot of the foundation of what I'm going to be talking with you about has to do with me not having some kind of a rich relative, some kind of a real advantage of getting into the business and understanding what's going on. Because a lot of the foundation things we're going to talk about today has to do with being nose to nose and toes to toes with so many people and so many experiences in this business over the last 30 years. So I'm a conservative investor. I'm a conservative person. I did read the book Think and Grow Rich. I quit my job at the prison to be in the real estate business with nothing but ambition, self-discipline, and a way, way above average work ethic. So let me talk to you about that for just a second. So I graduated from college in the late 80s with a criminology degree. So the first job I could find out of college, real job, was working as a prison guard at a prison in Anamosa, Iowa called the Iowa Men's Reformatory. So that was my first real job. And actually it wasn't a bad job at all. A good way to get involved in the criminal justice world, except it was a hell of a lot different. I thought being in the criminology, criminal justice world is like you see on TV. So the CSI, the FBI shows, where there's so much action and drama and, they always get the bad guy in an hour, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what I thought that it would be like. And, I really discovered there's a big difference between the way I thought things would be and the way real life is when I started working at the prison. And again, not that it was a bad job. It wasn't a bad job at all. But I got to a point where I could not see myself working there for 30 plus years and having that as a career. So I'm in the warden's office one day, and actually for disciplinary reasons. Yep, disciplinary reasons. Some other security officers found an empty liquor bottle outside of one of my offices in the prison that I worked out of in a garbage can. And as you guys know, inmates don't have access to alcohol. There's no alcohol in the prison. So someone had smuggled the alcohol in. The prisoners, of course, drank it, and then they dumped it in a garbage can outside my office. And now the security staff thinks I have something to do with it. And so I go through a week of like interrogation. And this was like you'd see on TV. Dark room with bright lights, guys sitting around asking me all kinds of questions. And they were even going to hook me up to a polygraph to take a lie detector test. They didn't do it, but it was close to doing that. So at the end of the day, I had nothing to do with it. Okay, I didn't bring anything in for the inmates to drink. I didn't do that. And so after their investigation concluded, they finally decided I did have nothing to do with it. So I'm in the warden's office and having my last little exit conversation interview about this incident, okay? And while I'm waiting for him, I look over on the bookshelf, and if there's one thing that there's plenty of in a prison, folks, it's books, okay? And there's a book by the name of Think and Grow Rich, and I'm like, that's an interesting title. So I picked up the book. I started reading it while I was waiting for the warden. Went in, had my last exit interview with the warden about this incident, and I really became interested in the book so much so I took it home. I read the book all the way through, and then I decided to, after reading that, I decided to quit my job at the prison and jump into the real estate business full time. So that was going on 30 years ago. And so originally from Iowa, married 29 years. I'll be 30 years here in June. Like I said, former Iowa prison guard. When we went over that, and I told you how that process started. And there's not very many people doing what I do that were a former prison guard. So I tell you these things, and I give you the brief overview and brief background of me, even though I know a lot of you knew this, because I didn't have any advantages at all getting into multifamily. And so if you fast forward to today, over the last 30 years, I've been involved in the sale and acquisition of over $1 billion in investment real estate properties, going on about 30 years. And 99% of those have been in the eastern half of Iowa. And that tells you that's a hell of a lot of properties. I've raised over $100 million in capital from investors from all over the U.S. Along with partners, I started and owned a bank. Was a member of the board of directors, and we subsequently sold that bank. Now, this is where I ultimately got the nickname of the Paranoid Banker, was going through that. So when I sat on the board of directors, when I became one of the founders of the bank, I was also on the credit committee. One of the guys on the board of directors nicknamed me that because, as being part of a credit committee, you see loans coming in every week you meet. People want to borrow money. And so you see loans coming in, and I tended to be pretty conservative. And one day, one of the other board of director members, who was actually, to be honest with you, a little bit pissed off at me, because he wanted a couple of these loans to be going through. And I was like, I'm not seeing it. So he basically said, well, what are you, a paranoid banker or something? And, the group laughed and thought that was funny, and, over the years it kind of stuck. And the advantage I had as a lender and working at the bank, not as a lender, but a member of the board and of the credit committee, was I was still involved heavily in the investment real estate business, especially multifamily. So I knew what I knew. And so when these deals would come across our desk, when these people would want financing, a lot of the times the board didn't like and the credit didn't like what I had to say about some of these deals, because not only did I know a lot about the properties, I might have known a lot about the people behind, looking at borrowing the money too. So again, part of that bank, that's where I got my nickname from. We owned the bank for a few years, and then we were subsequently bought out of that bank. I'm also an author. I've written 5 books on multifamily investing. All you really need to do is go to Amazon, go to Barnes & Noble. You can get any of my books there. You can actually go to my website, darrengarman.com, and you can download these books for free. But, if you want the paperback, want to get it that way, you can go to Amazon, or you can, go to Barnes & Noble. And currently oversee $40 million plus in real estate assets, most of those being multifamily. And we have hundreds of investment partners from all over the U.S. and in some parts of the world too, and we are growing. And so that list right there, which I know is hard for you to see, I know it's very hard for you to see, is kind of a partial list of some of our partners that we have. And I think we have investment partners. I better not say from every state, because that's probably not accurate. But we're probably pretty close to having at least 1 or 2 partners from about every state. And most of our investment partners are from states that you would think they would be from. The Californias, the New Yorks, the Floridas, the Texas, New York. So not surprisingly, a large amount of our investors come from there, but we have folks from all over the U.S. And so 25 plus years ago, I discovered an investment opportunity. But it took me a little over 10 years to take advantage of this investment myself personally. So let me tell you what I mean by that. And when I did, other investors wanted to get involved with me as well as an investor and owner of these apartment communities. And so what I'm going to do here is I am going to, I'm going to back up for just a second here. There we go. All right. So about 30 years ago, I got into the investment real estate business, and I decided to specifically focus on multifamily. Okay, so got a real estate license, wanted to basically focus on multifamily, but this is an important part, guys. I did this as a real estate agent, not as a real estate investor. So 30 plus years ago, the furthest thing from my mind was being a real estate investor. Okay, so think about it. I've quit my job at the prison. It's a state job, so there's nice benefits, retirement packages involved in that. That's all gone. Don't have much money. My wife is now working and working more because I've quit the job. So I wasn't really thinking about finding capital to invest in any real estate. I'm thinking about how can I start producing some income while at the same time getting involved in what I think is going to be a lot of fun, and that's multifamily properties. So about 30 years ago, I started to just focus on being the salesperson, the agent, the broker, go-to guy for multifamily properties. So 30 years ago, that's how I got my start. I'm going to get my real estate license. I want to learn more and be more involved in multifamily properties. But I'm just going to spend time selling the properties, connecting buyers and sellers of apartment communities, large and small. So that's what I focused on. And it took me a little bit over 10 years to take advantage of this personally. So for 10 years, I was basically a sales guy. That's basically what I did. Sold a lot of real estate, a lot of apartment communities. And it took me 10 years for, the message to finally get through, to be, whatever you want to call it, hit on the head, the bell went off, the light bulb went off, however you want to call it, to really be thinking of all of my clients are making really good money owning these properties. Why in the hell am I not doing this? What's keeping me from doing this? So about 15 years ago, I decided to jump into not only still having the brokerage side of the business, which we still do today, but being involved as an owner of multifamily real estate, uh, and really kind of doing what my clients were doing. That's really what I was seeing. And so I'll tell you how the first real property that I owned, how it evolved. What happened was, I had a 24 unit property come up that I had for sale, and one of my clients who's looking to buy more apartments, it was a perfect fit for him. So I presented him the property, and he said, "Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we buy it together? You and me, and let's put a little partnership together, a little group together, and let's buy it. You oversee it, you run it, you manage it, you know the market, you know a lot about the property, so you take care of everything from a management standpoint, and you run the property, you get some ownership in the property, you put some money into it too, and let's put a partnership together and let's buy this." So, looking back on it now, it's kind of funny I even thought about it. I'm thinking, oh, gee, is this something I want to do? And, should I do it? Should I not do it? Looking back on it now, it's funny I even had those thoughts. But the interesting thing he told me was, he said, "Look, if you do this, and this goes well, you can not only own this property, there might be a whole bunch of other ownership opportunities that you could create for yourself, for me, and for other people like me." I thought that was interesting. Because here's what was really going on at that time, guys, and it's important to know this. It's important to know the shift that went on. And here's the shift. Up to about 15 years ago, most investors that own multifamily property, even large ones, most of those investors were mom and pop owners and investors. Okay? So in other words, they were landlords and they did all of the work day in and day out to the properties. Okay? They managed it. They oversaw all the operations, and even with some of the larger properties, they may have had employees hired, but they were still overseeing most of the operations. And 99% of the properties that I dealt with, and the people that I would deal with, they were active owners. Day-to-day cares of life, on top of it, active landlords. But then, like I said, about 15 years ago, what started to shift, and I started seeing it happening, especially when this client of mine started to recommend this and ask if I would be involved in a partnership with him, is there started to be a shift from the active owner side of things over to the passive side of things. Okay? And so it wasn't an overnight shift. I mean, this didn't happen on a Monday, and then all of a sudden Tuesday, everything changed 180 degrees. But it started happening. And so if you think about it, if you fast forward to today, the majority now of investors that want to own multifamily properties, again, not all, because I know that there are some right now on our, taking part in our summit today that are active. They're going to be landlords, or they are landlords, and they're doing their own thing. But no matter if you're active or passive, the shift has just been undeniable over the last 15 years to passive. And so you've got more and more investors. They want to take advantage of owning multifamily properties. They want to be involved in them. They know they should be involved in them. Okay, but they don't want to be active in the day-to-day running and management. Okay, and again, I started seeing this happen about 15 years ago. And so as you can see on your screen, you started to have people kind of go from, the guy working on the water heater, taking the maintenance call. And by the way, those maintenance calls, when those big maintenance calls come in, they never come in Monday at 9:35 Central Time, do they? No, I mean, it's always, 1:30 in the morning on a Saturday, a Sunday or something like that. But you started to see a shift from folks going from active to being more passive. And this also meant the same when it came to understanding and wanting to be involved not only in owning and managing, but also knowing about real estate. Because it's one thing to know that real estate's a good investment, and we're talking multifamily now, of course. It's one thing to understand that, maybe that's something we need to be more involved in, but it's a completely different thing when it comes to real estate law, right? So now you're talking about, all of the real estate laws, all of the tenant laws, all of the landlord laws, all of the things you need to know in order to not only, run a good property and a profitable property, but also make sure that you don't have any issues with the law. Okay, so you've got kind of a double whammy going on there. You've got investment performance and then knowledge about what you can and cannot do, what you should and should not do. And again, that just adds another layer to the reason why, again, most people, not all, but many people today are like, I really don't want to keep up with what's going on with the CARES Act right now, and I really don't want to know about all of the changes in landlord tenant law and all the things we need to do and we need to know and we need to do properly. I'd rather have somebody else deal with that. Not surprising that that's more and more the case, okay? And since then, investors have been enjoying and profiting from these apartment investments right along with me. And so, like I said, I recognized 15 years ago that there is an interest and a need from investors to want to own apartment communities actively, right? And we still do a lot of work with active owners, active landlords who want to run and own their own properties and do their day-to-day. But we spend a heck of a lot of time with investors that basically have said, look, I want to think about this multifamily thing. I want to think about doing it passively. I've got other things I want to spend my time on, but I don't want to miss out on these opportunities, okay? And so, not surprisingly, you fast forward today, we've got a little bit over 230 investment partners from all over the U.S. that have joined us and own real estate with us. But along with the investment success that I've talked about so far, along with kind of the path that I've led you down so far, there come myths, right? Myths. But first, let's take a step back here and let's have a chat while you're here. Let's do that. Get a sip of water and let's just kind of take a step back for a second. Let's talk about one reason why you're actually taking part in this multifamily investment virtual summit today. The first has to do with smoke and mirrors. The first has to do with smoke and mirrors. Okay? So what I mean by smoke and mirrors is one of the reasons why you're here today and you are watching your multifamily investment summit from your home or office is because you want to see if this is for real. Right? Is this Darren guy for real? Is what Darren talks about for real? Is what I see in those emails every day, is that for real? Or is it frankly bullshit? What is it? Is this real? Is it fake? What the hell is really going on here? Or is it smoke and mirrors? And frankly, that's one of the reasons why you're here. And that's expected. That's the way it should be, by the way. Is this guy that is supposedly, has the prison guard story, and now is a multifamily expert? I mean, that's kind of hard for some people to believe, right? So that's one reason why you're here. Another one is, why in the heck would so many investors own their own multifamily communities? Why? And you may even be asking that more, especially today, with everything that's going on. And then you finally decided you wanted to get some access to the information, to some of the properties that we're going to talk about and discuss, and get access to me. And so, these are really the main reasons why you're here, is access, is this for real? Is this smoke and mirrors? Is what's going on, what I've been reading in the emails, what I've been seeing in the videos, is that a bunch of bullshit, or is this really the deal? And that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Okay? So let's jump into these myths, guys. Let's jump into these myths. So I'm sure somehow, somewhere over the years, you've heard these myths about multifamily and investment real estate, even though most of these are completely false. But let's talk about my top 3 multifamily myths for just a second here, okay? The first one, multifamily investments are really a headache and really not that great compared to other investments. That's myth number 1. Right? Multifamily investments are really a headache and really not that great compared with other investments. Or, what's so great about owning apartment communities anyway? What's so great about it? Well, here's some things you want to be thinking about, especially in the world of investing as we know it today. You get a good rate of return. Most of the time, you should be in the double-digit range, by the way. There are many investments that provide good returns, and I'm going to argue later on that return shouldn't actually be the number one thing you should be shooting for, and we'll talk about that later. But you should be in the double-digit range with your returns on your multifamily properties. But not only do you get some good returns, you get predictability and immunity to unrelated investment events. What is one of the top unrelated investment events that's going on right now? That's right, the virus, right? The virus. And we'll talk more about that. So let's talk about predictability for a second. With multifamily, they're pretty predictable. And the nice thing about predictable properties are you can make decisions on what's going to happen in the future, but you can make those decisions now. So here's an example. With one of our properties, we have a 100-unit property in Southwest Cedar Rapids, okay? I know what the rents are on all those units, of course, not right off the top of my head, but I know all the rents on those units today, next month, 2 months from now, 4 months from now, 6 months from now. I know what those rents are going to be. Same with the expenses, pretty much. I know what my taxes are going to be. I know what my insurance is going to be. I pretty much have an idea where my utilities are going to be. Lawn mowing, snow, I pretty much know where they're going to be. Okay? You don't have wild swings with those things I just mentioned, like you do in many other kinds of investments. So that level of predictability not only kind of makes you sleep better at night, but it also allows you to make decisions now on the future income that's going to be coming in. Big, big advantage. Big advantage. Because many popular investments right now offer what? Roller coaster rides. I'm not going to pick on the stock market, but it is low-hanging fruit, guys. And by the way, I got money in the stock market too. I still do. But, it's laying awake at night, worrying, wondering about stock price, performance, losing money, in a world of daily value changes based on bad economic or social news, good economic or social news. How about terrorism, right? Thank goodness we haven't heard much of that lately, but you and I know it's coming. There'll be something coming down the road here pretty soon. Wall Street lies, and how the big Wall Street companies do what they need to do and distribute as much propaganda as they can to protect what they have. The global political news of the day. Then you got North Korea, China, trade, and of course, you know, the big thing in the headlines is COVID-19. See, owning apartment communities makes your investment safer and more secure. And it's kind of funny because a lot of investing nowadays is on cutting edge kind of stuff, right? So what's the new development? What's the new invention? What's the new technology? If you guys like me probably get 2 or 3 emails a day of some kind of pitch from some investment company or firm on the new thing that's rolling out and why you should be investing in it and looking into it. Well, that's all good. And there's in no way am I saying you should just ignore that and not participate in any of that. But it's interesting how multifamily investing hasn't changed for probably 200 years. Multifamily ownership probably hasn't changed for a couple hundred years, really. And it's interesting on how reliable and predictable that investment is, and it doesn't even really change very much, versus a place like the stock market, other areas that change really on a daily basis. Because apartment communities will and do offer growth and return on your money regardless of market forces. Regardless of outside market forces. Without more drama, more heartburn, or surprises. And here's the deal, guys. Investors are demanding a good return with a solid, more predictable asset. Aren't they? How many investors want to go through more roller coaster rides like they've gone through over the last month? How many of my investment partners right now and owners have gone through roller coaster rides in the last couple of months? That's right. None. None. Continued growth, and the smart investors know that it's apartment communities, especially in conservative marketplaces, that provide this. Okay, conservative marketplaces. So let me just throw a couple of things out at you. So the big conversation over the last couple of months has been, you had to have seen this somewhere in the news. Are tenants going to pay rent? You've seen this, right? And maybe some of you that own your own multifamily real estate, maybe you've got some direct experience with this right now. And the media, which I have opinions on, by the way, but I'll save those for later. The media, the middle of March, was saying that residents aren't going to pay rent, tenants are scared, they're not going to pay, there's going to be 50% of apartment communities, 50% of them, the tenants aren't going to pay, and gloom and doom, and everything's going to go to hell, pretty much. Then once we got close to April 1st, you still heard the same message. Then about April 5th or 6th, here's what came out. It wasn't 50%, but we know 30% of apartment renters did not pay their rent in April. Folks, that's wrong. That's wrong. It's well over 90%. It's 90%. Okay? And so, and the fact of the matter is, people will need a place to live. They will always need a place to live. And you want to have the asset that is going to be in consistent and constant demand, even when times are crappy. Now let's go ahead and let's contrast what I just told you with Sherwin-Williams paint. Okay? Sherwin-Williams paint. Any of you guys ever use Sherwin-Williams paint? Well, we do all the time, especially on our apartments. We use that to paint our apartments pretty much. And what has happened to Sherwin-Williams paint stock over the last couple of weeks? Last 3 to 4 weeks? It's gone down, hasn't it? Just like every other stock, unless it's like Amazon or something like that, most every stock has gone down and taken deep, deep dives. So let me ask you this question. What does the virus, what does terrorism, what does what China decides, what does President Trump, whatever President Trump decides, what does any of that have to do with Sherwin-Williams paint? Nothing. Nothing. But what happens to the price of the stock of the paint company, which is considered, I believe, one of the best in the U.S.? It goes down. It goes up. It goes down. It goes up. When all of this stuff going on has absolutely nothing to do with that, it's affected by it. It's affected by it. But again, apartment communities are not affected by it. Then you got social forces, okay? Folks, we are a nation of renters. And let me just tell you, and I'm going to be coming out with more information on this in the next couple of weeks, separate from this. But we are a nation of renters, and we are a rental society, not an ownership society. For most, the American dream of owning your own home does not work anymore. Now, here's an important point. So when I talk to people about this, it's like, oh, wait a minute, Darren, hold on. In my market, the houses are flying. People are buying houses like crazy. They're buying condos like crazy. There's development going on. Look, I know that. That's happening here. So on my way home, so I'm at the office right now with you. But when I'm done here, I'll go home. And on my way home, I'll go past at least 2 developments that are going on right now. So in no way am I saying that there is not anyone buying, developing, building homes or condos. It's happening. It's happening. And it's even trending upward in some areas, like I said. But here are the facts. Cost of living increases are coming faster than wages in a big, big way. And you know this. You don't need me to tell you that your cost of living, no matter where you are right now in your life, is going up much higher and faster than the money that you're earning from whatever pension, if you're collecting a pension, from your other investments, from your job. You know this to be the case. Look, gone are the days of good old dad working and supporting an entire family. Remember that? So I remember as a kid, I'd get up in the morning before school, and I used to love to watch TV. Not the best thing for a kid to do probably before they go to school, but I love to watch TV. And back in the day, there were 3 channels, 3 stations. You get ABC, NBC, CBS, and maybe you could get public television if you were lucky. That was it. Well, in the early mornings on one of those stations, there used to be a show on called Leave It to Beaver. You guys anybody, does that ring a bell with anybody? Leave It to Beaver? And, Leave It to Beaver was, all about dad working, going to the job, taking care of the family, June stayed home, took care of the beeve and, all the kids. And that's the way it was. And so you go from 60s to 70s to all the way up through now, that doesn't exist anymore. Those days are gone for 99% of people because everyone has to work now. It has to do with cost of living. To not only pay the bills, but also to have a little bit of fun, right? And save some money too. But then if you throw in wild cards like healthcare, how about that wild card? Gas, groceries, tuition, maybe for your son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, maybe they need help with some tuition. Entertainment. You want to go do something. You want to go to a concert. You want to do something like that. You throw those wild cards in, and here's the deal, guys. Making ends meet for the average American now is tough. It is. Meaning, owning a home, and remember, it's not just about owning the home and your mortgage payment, guys. It's the ongoing cost of owning a home or condo. For most, it just does not make financial sense. For most people, it doesn't. Meaning, they will rent. And the rental pool will continue to grow and grow. Now, here's an important, very, very important thought for you. An important point. Do you think once the COVID-19 dust settles, okay? Let's say once things get back to normal, we'll just call it that way, even though they won't really ever be probably normal. Let's just, once the dust settles, okay? Do you think there will be more people wanting to rent, needing to rent, have to rent, or less? What do you think? There will be more. So here's the interesting thing, guys. Over the next 2 years, you're going to see demand from tenants grow at a huge rate because they want to, they have to, they need to rent. The pool's going to grow and grow in a big way. And the more demand to rent apartments from prospective tenants, the more income and the higher return to apartment owners. I mean, it's all about supply and demand, guys. This is not anything that's, requires us to bring in any experts that I need to have, on this multifamily investment summit with me. The more the apartment property values will continue to grow too. I mean, the longer my line is out the door filling out applications for my property, the more my property is going to be worth. And the value growth is really fueled by investor demand to own them too. So right now, there are 4, and there's more, but I read about 4 private equity funds right now that are having to turn investors away right now. Right now, as all of the virus thing is still going on, all of this is happening, there are private equity funds that have had to put a stop to investors, not taking money out, but investors putting money in. Why? Why is this going on? Because they are going to buy real estate. That's why. And a lot of them are going to be focused on multi-family. So when you have investors like this that are also now starting to line up, just like tenants, what does that do to the value of multifamily properties? They go up. So look, when investors see a line of tenants waiting to fill out rental applications, they will want to what owners of the apartments have. And they're going to pay you for it. So if you own a multifamily property in the next 5 to 6 years, chances are someone will be knocking on your door, either literally or figuratively, to buy it. To buy it. Because of what we're talking about. So as of right now, even with all of this going on with this virus, I get a minimum of 2 inquiries a week from people saying, hey, do you want to sell this property? Do you want to sell that property? Minimum of 2 right now. Before the virus, it was 3 times that. A week. So let's go to technology and data for a second. Let's just take a quick shift here. So you're probably thinking, Darren, what the hell does technology and data have to do with anything that we're talking about here? Especially with multifamily property. What are you talking about? Here's the problem, guys. Technology is making financial markets unsafe. And I call it unsafe at any speed. And what I mean by that is it doesn't matter if you're a tech person and you're totally involved in it, or you're like my mother-in-law. Okay, I get to get along with my mother-in-law great. Karen's fantastic, but she has trouble trying to figure out online banking. It's like a big problem for her, but she figures it out. So she's way behind the curve. Then you got people that are way ahead of the curve, but it doesn't matter. The problem is still there for anybody because technology is dangerous to investments. Think about this, guys. All conventional market investments are interconnected through technology, aren't they? So if you think your CD is safe at the bank or credit union, keep in mind it is somehow hooked up to the bank or credit union's computer system. Okay? And look, I think technology is great. I'm not one of these guys that is saying, live in a cave. I watched something the other day where some guy is saying, get rid of your cell phone. Don't even have that. Go back to landline. And so I'm not going there. I mean, that's not my opinion. I think technology is great. But here's the deal. It is bad investment news for you because all conventional investments are hooked up to networks or the internet. All of them. And here's a scary thought, guys. So we have been woken up with this virus thing in a big, big way, haven't we? We've been woken up in a big way. And as I said on one of my podcasts recently, it has shown us where we were all exposed in one place or another, right? Well, what if, and this is like one crisis. There are other crises that could happen, right? So in other words, what if the internet went down for 2 weeks? What if somehow somebody hacked into the internet and it went down for 2 weeks? How would your business be? How would you be? What would you do? Right? The problem with this is that doesn't even count being hacked into your personal information. So we're all dependent on this. And everything is hooked up to this. Again, I'm not saying we should live in a cave. It's just a fact. And so you can't go a week without hearing about yet another computer virus spreading. Right? Or data being stolen. That's the big one. I mean, you hear about that probably twice a week. I would bet, I know for a fact, 90+% of you on this multifamily investment summit and property tour right now have had something stolen from you in the last year. Whether it's money, whether it's information, at least 90+% of you. Company X disclosed today that someone stole all of their customer information. Or the thieves just generally sell the information that they steal, is pretty much what they do. You've got flash crashes, data swipes caused by the interconnectivity. Then you got social networks, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, phishing scams, fake emails, bots attacking your Wi-Fi. How many fake emails do you get a day? How many times have you been susceptible to them? See, I think I'm a pretty smart guy, but there's been a couple of times where I'm like, well, yeah, my Amazon account must not, or there's something that just looks pretty real, and it's not. And it's not. So here's the thing I want you to understand. No hacker is going to break into a brick and mortar 100-unit apartment building. Not going to happen. as great as technology is, it's the very reason to focus on non-tech investments like apartments. Now, I want you to think about something as I tell you this. This isn't so much a revelation, is it? I mean, what I've just told you right now, for most of you, it's not like, yeah, I've never thought of that. Most of you have thought about this. But now, during the times that we're in now and the times we will be in, this will have considerable value. Not only for you personally, but for those that want to have it too. Okay? So, the secret sauce. Conservative apartments is the real investment alternative that has the benefits that so many investors are looking for. It's not just about income and return, guys. And I want to, if there's one thing you get out of this multifamily investment summit part, not the tour part yet, but this part, it's no longer about the return anymore, guys. What do you think the first thing is that someone asks me when I talk to them about a specific apartment opportunity they could own, either passive or active? What's their first question? It's usually, what's the return? What's the return? That's the wrong question. Is that a question that needs to be asked? Yes. Is that a question you need to know the answer to? Hell yes. But that's not the first one. The first one needs to be, where is it? What is it? What place is it in? Because it's not just about the income and return anymore, guys. It's about what the investment can do with predictability, insulation, and protection. Okay? Multifamily properties have this. It checks all the boxes. Better investment predictability with really good returns and income. There's no drama. There's no roller coaster rides causing sleepless nights. This is the reason to own apartment communities, whether actively or passively. All right? So, right now, we usually end up, at our live event, we usually end up taking a 15-minute break. Okay? But here's what we are going to do, folks. It is about 10 minutes after the hour. We're going to take 10 minutes. Okay, we're going to take 10 minutes. So if you need to use the restroom, refill your coffee, get your water, we're going to take 10 minutes, and then we will get started again with the second half of our multi-family summit. Okay, so we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Okay, everybody, we are going to go ahead and get started. I want to make sure that we are still sharing the screen here. All right. Thank you for those guys that did respond to me. Just making sure you guys are doing okay out there. I'll mention a couple quick things before we jump into the last half of our summit information, and then we'll get into the property tour. Usually what you can expect if you are here live is, I'll just exit that out here. Usually what you can expect if you're here live is on breaks, I have a lot of conversations with folks that where we have the live event, we've got kind of a kitchen area. You know, we've got coffee and donuts and bagels and all that kind of stuff set up. And so it's a really good place to have conversations and really kind of get into the weeds on some things. Some folks can clarify some things, and we can answer questions. It's really good thing. It's really a good thing. And probably a lot of the value that a lot of the participants get is through those conversations. And one thing that virtually it's kind of hard to do that. Yeah, we can type each other messages and we can have FaceTime and we can do that. The problem with doing that, unfortunately, is that we get a lot of background noise and things from other participants. And so, having done this before, it's just a little challenging. And so, I'll give you like an example. Saturday Night Live had a skit. It was like, I think, their first virtual tour. Saturday Night Live had a skit where they had this, a couple of employees had their first Zoom meeting, and they didn't know that they were on camera, so they were eating food, using the restroom, and it's all on camera. You know what I mean? And so, unfortunately, it's funny, but unfortunately, that does happen. I've been on conference calls, and these are supposedly, some pretty smart folks, and you can hear the toilet flushing while we're on the conference call. Just kind of funny. So I tell you all that because usually, if you were here, we usually will have our meetings at our summit at Forest Ridge, is where we all get together, and it's just a really good environment for a lot of back and forth communication. And so when we're done here, when we get kind of close, I'm going to be sending you our holdings catalog. Some of you have it, I think, but it will help you look at that as you go through, and we look at the properties. We got the video tour of the properties as we go around and look at those. But after that, and after you've gone through all of that, I'm available to have conversations. So it would be a good idea, if you haven't done so yet, to be writing down questions, things that you may want to know about, and hell, maybe things you might not agree with, so we can have those discussions. Because we will have opportunity after today to have the discussions, and we can have those discussions one-on-one too. That's not a problem. So just want to let you guys know about that. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get back going. So just to give you an idea, we are about halfway through our summit part of this. And then after this, we will have the tour. I would say we'll probably be, another 40 minutes or so, 45, for the remainder of what we're going to cover. And then we'll go ahead and we'll hit the summit, the tour part of the summit, excuse me. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So I want you to be thinking about something. And I want you to be thinking about your current and future financial situation. Knowing what you've just learned, I want you to come up with ideas about how multifamily can have a positive impact based on your current and future financial situation. So this is nothing where you have to share anything in the chat. You certainly can if you want. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine if you want to. But think about this. Because time is going to be going by. Next month will be here before you know it. Next year will be here before you know it. And how can what we've talked about, not only, guys, remember this. This doesn't just apply to regular money. This applies to IRA money too. I mean, if you don't know, investing your IRA in real estate, and of course specifically we're talking multifamily today, is doable, and it's really not hard to do. Even though some people would think, well, geez, that sounds kind of complicated. Is it legal? Does it cost a lot of money? And I think if you haven't looked into this yet, you'd be surprised how easy it is and how worthwhile it is to look into. Okay. So let's kind of use this as our foundation then, moving forward about what we are going to cover now, because we're going to talk about myth number 2. Myth number 2, and I went over that a little too quickly, are property management myths. Property management will take care of everything. The last summit I had, one of our guests was a property manager, and so we had a lively conversation for most of the summit. And the thing I want you to understand is a lot of investors, both active and passive, want to pass on all of the responsibility to property management. That's good and that's bad. All right, so let's cover what some of those things are. So here are my property management company commandments. Now I want you to know, I know this because of having going on, 30 years of experience with property management companies. And so there may be exceptions out there. Maybe you're like one of my last participants in my last summit and you do a great job and your clients love you and everything's great. But let's understand, for the most part, property management company commandments are as follows, and here's mine. The least I need to do to keep the fees coming in. Okay? I don't enjoy this work. I just do it because I have to. By the way, some of these things I've heard from management employees over the years. Property performance is the owner's fault. So here's the funny thing. And I still see this today, but I saw it a lot when I was just in the real estate brokerage side of things, because I'd go to a property and there'd be a laundry list of things that were wrong. From condition to tenants paying rent late, to tenants not even paying rent, to you name it, issues. And so I'd ask the management company, I'd say, hey, what's going on? Well, the owner won't give us any money to do this. The owner's not the owner. So the management company would always point to, it's the owner's fault, right? And who do you think the owner would point to? That's right, it's a management company's fault. And back and forth. Number 4, if there's a big problem, I'll just call the owner. So, for those of you that maybe own investment real estate, maybe multifamily right now, for those of you that may have a management company managing your multifamily units, you know this to be true. You get calls all the time. And you're like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be managing this for me. But they're calling you, asking you, should they, could they, will they do X? Okay, if there's a big problem, you're going to get the call. Happens all the time. And this surprises a lot of the clients that I've worked with over the years that invest in their own properties and then turn it over to a management company. Again, there's nothing wrong with this. But it is a surprise when they tell me, I thought they'd take care of a lot, but they're calling me all the time. Well, here's the reason why. Here's the biggie, number 5. It's up to the owner to raise rents or find the lowest cost providers or reduce expenses. We don't have enough time to do that. This is a huge surprise for a lot of people. A lot of people, investors like us, think that management companies, this is what they're paid to do. They're paid to get the rents up as high as they can, get the expenses reduced as much as possible, use the most quality but lowest cost providers they can. No, that's not what they do. property management companies want to do one thing, and that's get through the day. Okay? They're babysitters. They want to get through the day. They're worried about babysitting your property. They're not worried about maximizing the income and the return of your property. Please make sure you remember that. Okay. Number 6, the owner can take care of collecting past due rent. So you got some residents that maybe didn't pay rent. Maybe you've got an eviction or two, or maybe a few evictions over a period of, let's say, 6 to 8 months. Maybe they do some damage on the way out of the apartment unit. Well, who do you think is going to go collect that money? It's not going to be the management company. Now, they may tell you they will, but no, it's going to have to be you. Number 7, we don't get paid enough to deal with this. I've heard that many times. And then number 8, and it's related to number 5, increase value. What are you talking about? What value? So I'll give you a little information, just a few months old. So I was working on one of our multifamily properties, and it's a 36-unit property being managed by a management company. Owner of the property has contacted us. Actually, we were looking at buying it. Okay? Contacts me, I think about ready to sell. What can I provide you? So he provides us, the financial information on the property. And I noticed that the rents were relatively low. So I mentioned to the owner that I thought, well, your rents are kind of low. And he was surprised to hear this. Well, what he discovered was a couple of months prior to him deciding it may be time to sell and to contact me, that out of 36 units, they had 7 or 8 empty, vacant at this time, which is roughly, what is that, like 20%, maybe a little more than 20%? It's quite a bit. So what do you think the management company did in response to that? Instead of making sure that their marketing was where it needed to be, making sure that their lead generation and their follow-up was where it needed to be, instead of making sure that their present systems were operating at the highest level they could, what do you think their answer is? Lower rent. Let's just lower the rent. So unbeknownst to the owner, they lowered the rent on 8 of his units. No, I take that back. 7 of his units, $30 to $35 a month. Now, I want you to think about this. That is usually about a 1-year jump. So in other words, usually within a year period of time, we will raise rents around $30 a month on average. Probably pretty close. Okay, depending on what the rent levels are. So by them reducing the rent $30 a month on these units, which rented in the $500 to $600+ range, they basically took those units back a year in time in value by doing that. That makes sense? And they didn't even tell the owner. I found out. Okay? So this is not a picking on management game here. I don't want that to be communicated here. But it is something that you need to understand. Because what separates you in terms of success with multifamily is being aligned with an investor with skin in the game. That's where that's where the rubber meets the road here, folks. Do you or are you aligned with someone that has skin in the game? It's really what separates properties from doing okay to maybe even poor to doing just frickin' fantastic, is who has skin in the game. Because here's the deal. There is a difference between selling you an investment or skin in the game investment. Selling you or skin in the game. So here's what I mean by that. You really only have skin in the game in one of two levels. Level number one is you're an active owner. And by definition, being active and involved as a landlord on the day-to-day basis, you've got skin in the game, pretty much. If you're passive, you need to damn well make sure whomever you're dealing with on the other end that owns the property with you, they better have skin in the game versus selling you the investment, right? Big difference. So let's talk active owners for just a second. So when our brokerage company, back before we got involved in owning the multifamily we do now, back then we would be contacted by an owner of an apartment community. We'd put it on the market, we'd sell it, and we'd move on. Did I really care what happened to that owner after the sale closed? No, I didn't care. Now, I would not conduct our operations, I wouldn't conduct our employees, and we wouldn't have a process where we operated like we didn't give a shit about anything, right? And just, had a business that was just not well run. But on the other hand, frankly, once Joe Spadats bought the 36-unit property from us and we moved on to the next thing, I'm not worried how well his property's doing. Okay? Why? I didn't have any skin in the game. We sold the investment. We sold the property. Today, there are many platforms, they call them, out there where you can invest as a passive investor. Just go to Google and you type in, you can find many different platforms. And here's the interesting thing about 99.9% of them. They're selling you. They don't have skin in the game themselves. They've got a platform where they go ahead and they match an opportunity to an investor. They put them together. They sell them. But they have nothing to do with the investment. So the investment goes to shit sometime down the road, or doesn't perform as well as it should, or any number of things come up. Do you think the folks that sold it to you are going to care? No, they're not. So whether you're active, again, by definition, an active owner has skin in the game. You give a shit, okay? Or if you're passive, you better have someone that has skin in the game and not just involved in some platform, involved in something that you're matched with something else and you buy it. Because nobody cares after that about you. They don't. So when it comes back to property management, the end goal of the managers and the property management company is to put the fires out and get through the day. Okay? That's it. They want to get the tenants taken care of, the maintenance calls done, the units shown that are for lease, the units that are leased turned over. This is all that's going on in their daily cares of life. They want to put the fires out and get through the day. So let's go over the property manager mindset versus the skin in the game mindset. Okay? On the left side of your screen are the points I've already covered. I won't go over them again. Okay? And those are my definitions. That's my property manager definitions over there of the property management mindset. So let's talk about the skin in the game mindset. Let's look at the right-hand side of your screen for just a moment. Those that are aligned with either, again, active themselves or passive with someone that has skin in the game, here's the differences. Instead of doing the least to keep fees coming in, skin in the game mindset is you do everything necessary to increase the owner's returns. Number two, you love to work on our properties and our investors. Number three, property performance is management's fault, 100%. So when I have my conference calls with my investment partners, when I have my monthly board meetings and yearly my board and I get together, what do you think they spend most of the time doing? They end up beating the shit out of me, pretty much. Right? And I don't mean that literally, but I mean they're hammering me. Why do we do this? Why is this happening? How come this is going on? Why is that going on? Right? Why? Because it's our fault. 100%. 100%. Number 4, we take responsibility because we are the owner. Right? By definition, we've got to take responsibility. Review rent ceilings and expense ceilings quarterly. We chase past due accounts until they die. And if my employees were in here with me right now, they would tell you this is the case. We're like Columbo chasing these people. Okay? We don't give up, and we chase them down. We should probably start a reality TV show about it, really. But number 7, we should get paid based on our performance. That's an interesting thought. Get paid on how well we do. Every move made is to increase property and partner value. We don't lower rents just to get them units rented and make it easier for us to manage, just to take the heat off from the owner. Every move is made to increase property and partner value. Number 9, every property gets full and direct attention, always at the top of the list in terms of importance. Now let me talk to you about that for just a second. Is it possible to have every single property as the most important one? No, it's not. However, to have a system in place where every property gets reviewed, looked at, worked on, and I'll just use the term monetized as much as possible, that has to happen. And once in a while, we'll go through that exercise. You know what we'll discover? We might have a property that just doesn't work for us anymore. We may have a property that might be kind of a dog right now, especially compared to others. And so we may make the decision, maybe we need to sell. Maybe we need to do something different. But see, the properties, each one of them gets that full attention, so we're not playing catch up. Okay? Not playing catch up. And again, no worrying allowed. Okay? We don't want, I can tell you, our partners, I don't want anybody worrying and wondering what's going on and, just laying awake at night. That is something that can't happen. And again, all of this, whether you're active or passive, is skin in the game. So let me give you my skin in the game criteria for apartment communities. So really, this is another way of saying, here are the apartment communities I believe you should focus on owning, either as an active or passive investor, that emphasizes the skin in the game process, okay? Number 1, no conversions. No conversions. So that means buying the 3-story home that was built in 1900 as a 4-bedroom house, but was converted into 7 sleeping rooms. No, you want to run away from those. Those are not the kind of properties you should own. That doesn't meet the criteria. Other conversions, by the way, are the commercial conversions. So in our marketplace right now here in and around Cedar Rapids, Iowa, it's not so much the thing now, but it has been over the last couple of years. It's buying these old buildings downtown, around downtown, warehouses, going in there and converting them into living units and then having them as rentals, multifamily properties. Bad idea. Bad idea. Okay? Why is that a bad idea, Darren? 2 reasons. Number 1 is the ongoing maintenance, repair, capital improvement issues you will run into with conversions. So think of it this way. A property that was built as a warehouse was built as a warehouse. A property that was built as a single-family home in 1900 was built as a single-family home. A lot of times you look at pro formas on these properties and the numbers are like, holy crap, this looks great. But what you don't see under the surface is the cost of running, managing, and maintaining conversions is very, very costly. Very costly. So when something is broken and needs to be fixed in the converted warehouse, your cost is going to be 30 or 40% more to fix it most of the time versus an apartment community built as an apartment community. Okay? So stay away from conversions. 2, no rural areas. Stay away from rural, small towns. So I'll tell you a story. A partner and I in 2004, we're two smart guys. We're really smart. So this is what we tell ourselves. And him and I bought a 25-unit property in a very, very small town between central and eastern Iowa. Population was like about 900 people. And we bought a 25-unit property for, I want to say, $15,000 a unit. Very, very inexpensive. So $15,000 a unit. And this was a brick 25-unit property sitting on 5 acres of land. Beautiful trees. There's a path that goes around on the, the property itself, full kitchen, hair salon, TV room, nice place. Okay? So we buy this. At the time we bought it, it was completely empty because it was a repossession. We buy it from the bank. We owned it 5 years. Sold it after 5 years. Out of 25 units, how many units do you think we had rented at the very most at any given time? Again, 25 units. So just answer the question to yourself or out loud. Out of 25 units in a 5-year period in small town, how many units do you think we had occupied at any given time, the most we ever had? $17. Yeah. And so the lesson that I've learned there, and being involved in a couple of similar projects like that, is you have to have an apartment community located close to some economic activity. Unfortunately, this little town, there was a convenience store, there was a bank, there was a Dollar General, and a bunch of little small businesses. That was it. Nothing else. And it was far enough away from larger metropolitan areas, cities or towns, where you weren't going to attract someone coming from those cities or towns to live there. Now, some small towns are like right next to a big city or a big town. That's different. They may be a small town, but if your driving time is 10 minutes, that's not a problem. But if your driving time is 45 one way, it's a problem. So no rural areas, guys. Okay. I had another client of mine that bought 3 apartment communities in a small town in northeast Iowa about 10 years ago. Fully occupied, 24 units, 3 properties side by side. Bragging to me he's making 20+% returns, property's just kicking ass. So every time I'd see him, I'd like to avoid him because I know he's going to tell me how great things are going, right? But no, he was telling me how good things are, which is good for him. So a couple years later, he calls me, wanting to know if I can help him sell these properties. I'm surprised. What happened? What? Sure, I can help you, but what's going on? Well, I only have 2 units occupied and I've been trying to get someone to rent the other units going on 8 months now, and I can't find anybody. What? He said, well, put it this way. I can find somebody, but they are not the kind of resident I can ever see putting in there, because it would be even worse putting him there than just having the unit empty. What happened? They stopped construction on the ethanol plant about a year before. Okay, so all those guys, people living there, moved, construction done. He's got a property, 2 out of 20 some units occupied. The property ended up going back to the bank. Okay, no rural areas. Number 3, no subsidized housing. Now, I'm going to give you one exception to that. But before I do, just in general, understand one thing about subsidized housing. And this is either Section 8, HUD, low-income housing, tax credit housing. You don't make the decisions about the property. The government makes the decisions. Okay? They tell you how much rent you can charge. They tell you how much of the deposit you can keep when a resident moves out. They dictate everything to you. Everything to you. Okay? And so, just to give you an example, one of the properties that we own, if we want to sell the property, now I take it back. Let's say we want to refinance the property. Let's say we want to refinance it. One of HUD's rules is we have to get a letter to all of the tenants asking them for their feedback on us refinancing the property. Now let me ask you a question. Why in the F do I have to let the tenants know I'm refinancing the property? Why? Because the government says I have to. There are hundreds of these kinds of things you need to be aware of when it comes to subsidized housing. Because on the surface, subsidized housing sounds like a great thing. Your rent's guaranteed. The government pays every month. Well, the government pays if they renew your contract, number one. Number two, a lot of times the government doesn't pay all the rent. They pay a portion of the rent. And you got to get the other portion from the tenant. And a lot of times, those residents that are low income are a little more challenging to get rent from. In addition, the way they treat the property, for the most part, is also a problem. So beware of subsidized housing. Now here's the exception. I told you there's an exception. Here it is. The exception that I've found through experience is what's called a HAP or a HUD contract property. What is that? What that means is the entire property, every single living unit, is under contract to the government, and the government pays rent for everybody in one check per month. Okay? A HAP is basically the contract between the owner and HUD. Those are the exception. Because, don't get me wrong here, you still have a lot of bullshit to put up with. A lot. But the financial process and the money that is earned from rents makes it worthwhile. Okay? It's worth it. But to get into small subsidized housing properties, or get into a smaller property and have some of your units subsidized, just be very careful and be aware. Okay? But in short, if you don't have experience, I recommend staying away from any HUD, low-income housing tax credit properties, or Section 8. Okay? All right. Number 4, single family. Single family homes, I believe, are one of the worst investments you can And that surprises a lot of people. What are you talking about, Darren? What do you mean? From a rental standpoint, they are. Here are the reasons why. Number one, you barely get enough rent to make your loan payments. So most single-family homes, if you buy them in an area that you believe will attract the best quality of resident, your loan payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, the rent will barely pay that. And that doesn't include any maintenance, repair, surprise items that come up. Middle of winter, furnace goes out, you got to call the repairman. It doesn't count any of that. And all you're really banking on is appreciation. You're hoping they appreciate. So pretty much in a nutshell, a single-family home is enough money to pay the monthly bills to cover that. Not really put much money in your pocket, by the way, to cover it. And then hopefully they appreciate. That's not a good way to invest in real estate, guys. Not to mention the fact that once a resident leaves a multifamily home, there's usually $2,000 to $3,000 worth of upgrading, remodel, probably work that needs to be done to get it ready to go for the next resident. So we still own 5 single-family homes, and I hate them. I hate them. As a matter of fact, we're in the process of selling them. The only reason we bought them was because we were buying a 60-unit apartment community, and guess what had to go with it in order for us to get the deal done? Well, the houses had to go with it. And so when they're occupied and running okay, they're fine from a management standpoint. So yeah, our management staff, maintenance, repair, management staff, they're rarely dealing with these homes while they're occupied. That is true. Very true. But in terms of income made, you're depending on appreciation. And anymore, that's really something you don't want to depend on. Right? And then the costs, once a resident leaves, of getting the house where it needs to be. And by the way, it's the same thing if the resident's there for 10 years. Someday you're going to want to sell it, and you're still going to have to put that money in there. Me and a couple other owners have had conversations. We kind of joke with each other, even though we think it's funny, it's not. We'll lose 1 year of income from a single-family home after the tenant moves out by, upgrading the carpet, linoleum, the floor coverings, and doing the repair and maintenance. And by that time, you're almost better off having the home vacant for 3 to 4 months. So single families, I don't recommend them. And some people are surprised by that, but be that as it may. Number 6 is where I get the real big surprise from, is no new construction. I really think you need to avoid new construction in a big, big way. Okay, new construction. Why? Because of how much it costs. That's really the reason why. So in most marketplaces today, not every marketplace, but most marketplaces, you don't see a lot of new apartment community construction going on. You see some, but you don't see a lot. Why is that? It has nothing to do with demand, by the way. The demand is there. The rental demand from tenants is there. But why don't you see more of it? Because of how much it costs. And so, construction costs are easily over $100,000 to $120,000 an apartment unit. And this is for nothing that's fancy. This is plain Jane, cookie cutter, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 750 square foot apartment. You're over $100,000 a unit. Hard to make the math work at that. Very hard. So what has to happen? How do I make the math work? Well, I either get grants, or I go to the city and I get some kind of funding, or I get some kind of subsidized funding from a source, maybe my state. So, in and around Cedar Rapids, some of the newer properties that have been constructed, these developers are putting $100,000 to $300,000 plus per unit in these properties. There is no way they're going to get that back when they sell. There's no way. And the reason they can put that amount of money into the new construction is because there's some grants attached to it. There's some low interest loans attached to it. That's funny money. They're juggling the funny money in order to get the properties built. So at the end of the day, they may be able to construct a process where financially the properties may pay for themselves. But folks, no one's going to pay $250,000 a unit when you want to sell it. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who used to be one of my business partners and still is a business partner, a couple things of mine, had a relationship with a gentleman that just built, and this is here on Cedar Rapids, just built, it was 80 two-bedroom townhouse units, 80, built last year. Okay? Wanted to sell. So we looked at them. The price point for these were $160,000 a unit. Now remember, we're buying existing properties for $40,000 to $50,000 a unit. So this is 3 times as much, 3 times more than what we typically pay. Or if you think of it another way, as a tenant, you have to pay at least 2 times as much to rent those apartments than a comparable apartment that's 25 years old, same size. Okay? So we're looking at this. And the math worked, kind of. But here's what we found out after we looked into it closer. It had a 10-year property tax abatement. Okay, so they still had to pay some property tax, but they were only paying at the time 20% of the real property tax bill, and it was, I don't want to say squeaking by, it was getting by, but not in a holy crap impressive way. Now, what do you have to look at? Well, what's going to happen when you have to pay full property taxes? So we looked at it, and 7, 8 years down the road when you had to pay full property taxes, you were writing a check every month to own it, even under the most optimistic circumstances. And there's no way I'm going to be able to buy it for $150,000 a unit today and sell it for $200,000 a unit to somebody else 7 years from now. That's not going to happen. Okay? That's not going to happen. Most new construction costs so damn much money. The numbers, A, don't work. B, you have to get top rent right out of the box just to break even and get a little bit of cash flow. And then you got resale. It's tough, folks, because here is the biggest theme of all 5 of these I've just gone over with you. And remember, I'm looking at this with skin in the game. Okay? Resale. The first thought you need to have when you're looking to get involved in anything related to multifamily real estate, whether you're active or passive, is can I sell it for a profit? What's the resale? And every one I've gone over here, 1 through 5, with maybe the exception of single family, it's kind of hard to justify good resale. Because if the answer is, well, I'm not quite sure, is that something you want to get involved in? No. No. Here is what I recommend. Number 1, skin in the game apartment communities. Number 1, you get involved in properties built as apartments. Okay? Built as apartments. Number 2, they should be less than 40 years old. And by the way, some people may say, geez, Darren, that's old, 40 years. Yeah, you can still find really good communities built as communities maybe in the late 60s, early to mid 70s. They're still just fine. Number 3, larger the better. This is a surprise to some. Some people think maybe I should start out with a fourplex. Maybe I should be an active owner of a 6-unit building or less, maybe a duplex. Or maybe the first passive investment I get involved in as an investor, maybe it should be a 12-unit building. While each one of those answers are not wrong, none of them are wrong. Okay? I can tell you, it takes the same amount of time, effort, energy, everything, with the exception of cash, and we can talk about that in a second, whether it's big or small. So what I found over the years, and I wish I would have known this 15, 20 years ago, is I'll spend the same amount of time thinking about working on positioning a 12-unit building than I will a 120-unit property. It's almost the same. So why in the hell wouldn't I do more of this over here with the 120-unit than the 12-unit? Again, there's no wrong answer here. But I'm telling you, the larger the better. I know it's safe to go smaller. I know, there's maybe less risk going smaller. But I'm telling you, it's larger. So if I had one regret that most of my partners have, and most of my clients that are active owners have, guys, it's this. They should have gone bigger. They should have started out with something bigger. Knowing what they know now, i.e. what I'm telling you, they should have gone bigger. I know it's hard to get out of the comfort zone. I know that. It's hard to start out of the blocks with something really good size. I get that. But you will be better off going bigger versus smaller. Number 4, pretty much speaks for itself. Number 5, your partner is invested. Again, if you are an active owner, this doesn't apply to you, but maybe it does. Maybe you're an active owner, maybe you've got a partner and you're both supposed to be doing something. Or maybe there's 3 of you and all 3 of you are supposed to be doing something. Well, you better make sure they got their money in the deal. Okay? Not just your money and then they help you. That's not the way it's going to work. I promise you it's going to fall apart. Your partner needs to be invested. So if you're a passive owner and you want to get involved in some kind of a partnership, some kind of a fund, you better damn well make sure who's ever running the show has their money invested in it. You better make sure. And again, you're not just being sold, okay? Do they have their own skin in the game? So those 5. So if you, 90% of any issues you will have as a multifamily investor, whether active or passive, will be avoided by avoiding these properties here and buying these properties here. So what I've done in just those 2 slides, and I'm oversimplifying this, I admit I'm doing that, is I've just saved you hundreds of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars if you stick to those 2 things. Okay? Because the performance of our apartment communities comes down to personal financial involvement. Personal time involvement. Because what gets measured, folks, gets accomplished. And I can tell you from the real estate partnerships and the funds that I oversee and run, there's a hell of a lot of measuring going on all the time. Because what gets measured gets accomplished. And with skin in the game, the measurement process comes in. If you don't have skin in the game, the measurement doesn't happen. You don't know what's getting accomplished, and you're frustrated wondering what the hell is going on. So I want you to think about something. And usually this time during our summit, I ask you to share stories about property managers and multifamily horror stories that you've experienced or heard about. The bad, the ugly, due to not having skin in the game. Okay, skin in the game. You think about that. So we don't have to share it on our chat right now. But I want you to think about it in your mind's eye, in your mind right now, because you've got these stories. Everybody does, pretty much. And if they don't have it personally, they know somebody that does. They know somebody that does. Whether it's Uncle Bill, Aunt Susie, everybody's got their story. But the way to avoid those stories for yourself is to get involved in your next multifamily property as an active owner with skin in the game, by definition, or you make sure if you're passive, you're aligned with someone that has skin in the game. I know I sound like a broken record. I know I do, but it is so important. So important. All right, let's take a step back here. So how are you feeling so far? We are a little bit over 2 hours into this. And again, you're here because, number one, checking to see if this is smoke and mirrors, especially in the age of fake everything. Is this for real? You get my emails, you watch my videos. Is this Garmin guy, is this really a real kind of thing going on? Is this for real? Also, you've been thinking about, or maybe you've been invested in before, or maybe you own multifamily now, and you're thinking of expanding the empire, growing the empire, right? In some way. And you're looking for more information on not only if you should, but how you should. How you should. And then using it as a leverage for a better tool and a better financial world. Especially with everything that's going on right now. Especially with everything. So, myth number 3. Myth number 3 will not take us very long. Let's talk about how do we get out of a multifamily property. How do I get out? Because myth number 3 is multifamily is not readily convertible into cash, right? So how many times have you heard this? I'd invest in real estate, but if I need the money, I can't get the money. Can't get it out of the real estate. When you own multifamily, active or passive, when is your biggest cash flow? When is it? It's when you sell, right? It's when you sell. So the top 3 questions always answered about this myth. Here they are. Here's the top 3 questions I get. Because the biggest cash flow you get is when you sell. That's it. How long will I be in the multifamily investment as an investor? So this is the number 1 question you need to be asking. And by the way, you don't want a specific answer. What? Why wouldn't I want a specific answer? Look, because no one really has a specific answer. Here's what I mean. As an active or passive investor or owner, you may have an idea about how long you may want to be in the investment. But rarely are you in the investment for exactly that long. So I would be totally irresponsible if you asked me with our next opportunity that were to come up, and let's say you're interested in our next opportunity. If you were to ask me, Darren, how long will I be in this investment, do you think? If I were to say, well, we're going to own it until May of 2027, then we're going to sell it in May, probably take us about 3 months. We'll cash out in July, and then, it'll all be done. Why is that irresponsible of me? Because I don't know. Do I know how good the economy is going to be in May 2027? Do I know if interest rates will be 30% or 2%? Do I know, will there be a demand? Will there not? Will there be a virus going on? I don't know. So look, you want windows here. You want to be thinking windows here, okay? You want to be thinking about windows, but not specifics. Some flexibility is what you need. Whether it's active, you're going to buy it yourself. How long do you plan on owning it? What's kind of your vision here? At least know, at least understand. When you get involved in people like me and you're passive, at least know, at least understand. But it's not going to be exact because no one has a crystal ball and can predict the future, right? But you need to know. Because now by knowing, you can start making plans. Number 2. Here's the big question you need to ask. How do I get out of the investment if I want or need to get out sooner in the time frame for doing so? So as an active investor, we're not really going to discuss that because you just put the property on the market and you sell it. So you buy your 12-unit building, your 24-unit building. You think you're going to own it 8 years. 4 years later, something happens, you need to sell the property, right? That's getting out sooner. But if you're a passive owner, how does that work? You need to ask that question. So let me tell you how I operate. So if you're one of my partners, and if you want to get out of the investment sooner than before we sell, what happens is I contact all of the other partners and I say, hey everybody, Joe Spadatz, our partner, our esteemed partner, wants to be bought out. Okay? We calculate what Joe's value is. Okay? Property's appraised. We get an idea what Joe's value is after the appraisal. Then now it's up to Joe to ask for whatever he wants for it. So let's say Joe's value is $100,000. Okay? If Joe wants, he can ask for $150,000 if he wants to from our other partners. Joe can ask for $50,000. Sell at a huge discount if he wants. It's up to Joe. But the bottom line is, the first step is by contacting the manager and saying, I want to get out sooner. Then what we do is I take your ownership interest, Joe's in this example, to the partners. I say, hey, Joe wants to sell his partnership interest. It's worth $100,000. Who wants to buy it? Now, here's what happens. 90+% of the time, one of those partners end up buying him out. That's what happens. But let's say that doesn't happen. None of the partners buy him out. Now what do we do? Number 2, the company now has the opportunity to buy Joe out. Okay? So we create this company. Joe's a partner in this company with other partners. None of the other partners want to buy Joe out. Okay? Number 2 is the company writes a check and buys Joe out. Now the company owns it and then distributes that ownership that the company has bought proportionately to all of the other partners. And so what I've just described to you in those two things happens 95% of the time. Successfully, by the way. So, but let's go a step further. I like to do kind of worst case scenarios. Let's say that the company doesn't want to buy Joe out. Partners don't want to buy Joe out. Company doesn't want to buy Joe out. What do we do then? Now we bring outside investors in to buy Joe out. That's what we do. So there's 3 alternatives for Joe to get out sooner than our window that we pretty much predicted would be. Now we're between 95 and 99% of the time that Joe gets out of the investment and gets a good cash flow. And what's his biggest cash flow? When he sells. So what I've just described to you, and we could go into the weeds on this topic all day, and I don't want to do that, but I just want to give you a good summary. What I've just described to you is what most people don't understand. Because what most people think is, oh, I'm in it now. Now what do I do? Now how do I get out? Now I have to wait for us to sell the whole property. No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. So 2 key things about point number 2 here. Number 1, understand what the process is to get out before the time frame you think you'll need to get out. How does the process work? What do you need to know? What are the things you may need to do? Okay? And number 2, how are the values calculated at that time? How are the values calculated? Okay? Number 3, how much money will I get when I sell or cash out? And I've kind of covered this in number 2, but it all depends on how much you want. Let me tell you what I mean by that. There's a value, and then there's a perceived value. Okay? So we have the property appraised. Let's go back to Joe Spadot's. So Joe's value's worth $100,000. We have a third-party appraisal that's been done. We find out what we owe on it, how much it's worth. We take all this stuff into account. Joe's interest is worth $100,000. Joe can sell it for whatever the hell he wants to sell it for. So here's what you'll see happen. Let's say we've had 3 years of just huge distributions. Property's going up in value year after year after year. It's been more successful than anyone thought. How hard do you think it's going to be for Joe to sell his $100,000 interest for more than $100,000? Probably not that hard. Heck, I've even had bidding wars between partners for a partner's interest before. Okay? On the other hand, let's say we've had 2 below average years. Maybe every quarter we didn't have a distribution. And maybe the distributions we did get, maybe they weren't that great. Maybe we've had some issues with the property. We've got more capital improvements to put into it. Let's just say things just aren't going that great with the property. They haven't been in the last couple of years. Joe wants to get out. His value is $100,000. Now, what's the chance that Joe gets his $100,000 now? He might, depending on what the future looks like, maybe the next year or 2. But if there's not a lot of if there's not a light at the end of the tunnel coming very quickly, he may sell for $85,000, $90,000. Okay? Could happen. But the bottom line is, you want to go through the process of understanding how much will you get when you sell or cash out. That's the question you need to be asking. So for us, when we talk to our partners, when they ask this question years before they get out, we basically say value less any cost of sale gives you your equity, less any debt we've got on the property, gives you your net equity, and whatever ownership percentage you've got of that net equity, that's how much it's worth. Pretty simple. But you'd be surprised how many people don't know that. Don't ask it. And are surprised by it. There we go. Sorry about that. So, though these are important, guys. Rate of return, income and distributions, property performance year in and year out, income taxes, asset management from rents, evictions, collections, expense management. All this is important stuff. Okay? Super important. And it's got to be part of your process, whether you're an active or a passive owner. The most important thing you need to be thinking about is how much am I going to get when we sell? Because that's your biggest cash flow. For some, it'll be the biggest they ever get. How much are you going to get when you sell? Okay? And by implementing everything that we've discussed today, it will lead to your largest cash flow. And like I said, for some, maybe the biggest that they've ever had. So let's talk about a couple of quick things here. Number one, I want you to think about in your own mind right now with where you are and where you are financially, the ideal time frame for you to own your own multifamily property and why. What is it? You can say it to yourself, think it to yourself. What would that be? And by the way, there's no wrong answer. I got partners that are in their late 20s, early 30s. They're almost like, hey, you know what? Just keep me posted once in a while. I'm in it for the long term. Just keep me posted and let me know how things are going. I've got others that, not surprisingly, maybe they're in their 60s, maybe they're in their early 70s. They're like, hey, how are things going this quarter? How are things going next quarter? How are things going, it all depends, and there's no wrong answer. But for you, what is your ideal time frame? Number two, have you ever been involved in an investment that took a long time to get out of? What did you learn from that? What can you use from that experience so it doesn't happen again? Now, I went over some things that we do to help our investment partners so they're not what I would call stuck in an investment project with us in a property, in one of our properties, or maybe a real estate partnership or fund on what we do. But have you ever been involved in one that took a long time to get out of, and what lessons did you learn? Okay? So, there's a lot of outside forces going on here. And multifamily property does a really, really good job of really beating those forces back, as we've been discussing. And, there's no such thing as a perfect investment. And let's be frank, let's just be honest with each other here. So if I was into gold, if I was a gold guy, I'd be talking about how great gold is, right? If I was a commodities guy, cocoa, whatever, I'd be telling you how great that is. If I was a day trader, I'd be telling you how great that is. So that's the way the world works. But I want you to think about everything that we've talked about, guys. Whether you're going to be active or passive, there are so many things that multifamily gives you that so many other investments don't, while at the same time maximizing your financial future. I mean, it's hard to come up with other investments that give you all of those benefits. It's not perfect, like I said. But we don't really think about those things when times are going great. So how many of you were thinking about any alternative investments 3 months ago when the market was at its highest it's ever been and everything is just, the economy's just going through the roof? How many of you were thinking about that? That's right, none of you were. Neither was I. But it's when the shit hits the fan times like this, when we're kind of exposed, it's now like, well, wait a minute. What can I do that still gets me really good financial benefits, but gives me the insulation, the protection, and the prediction, as well as the possibility of really, really big cash flows. What does that? All right, so let's take a look at a few properties right now, guys. And then we're going on our tour. So let me set the stage for you right now. We're going to look at 3 or 4 properties on your computer right now. I'm just going to discuss them with you a little bit. All right, we should be okay now. Hopefully we're okay. If we're not, somebody message me and let me know if we are not okay, but we should be. All right. Okay, good. So we've got 168 units as our first property. And like I said before, if you were here for the summit, this is where we would have our meeting, and this is where we would be. This is a property we will see on the tour, so I won't go into much more detail on this versus what I've covered, at least that you didn't see. But if there is an ideal property to own, this would be the ideal property to own. Good size, good location, very good returns, and we've owned it about a little bit over 10 years now. We bought it for $5.7 million, and it's appraised recently for $9.2 million. And as I said, when we do the appraisals, guys, we have third-party appraisers do it. And it's quite expensive at the end of the day because we have all of our stuff appraised, but you know that's the only way you can make sure that you keep things at arm's length, right? And then there's Glenbrook. And as I talked about with our HUD properties, I recommend staying away from subsidized housing unless it's in a good location like this, unless it doesn't smell, feel, or taste like a HUD property, because we all have pictures in our mind of what a HUD property looks like. But even though there is an incredible amount of bureaucratic bullshit that goes along with owning a property like this, it is typically worth it. Okay? It is worth it. So it is rare that I would say to own a subsidized property. This would be about the only exception. But in the big picture, it's those you really want to avoid, again, unless it's something like this. And again, this is one of the properties that I get, you know, probably one or at least 2 calls a week on, with people wanting to know if they could buy it. Then there's Raintree, 72 units. Again, you're going to notice something about the sizes of these properties. What I was talking about regarding size. Okay, location above average, resident mix average. You get an idea what the cash flow returns look like on this property. And remember, guys, these are giving those kinds of returns with the kinds of benefits that we've talked about. Okay, so again, return is important, but it is now moving down the pecking order in terms of the most important question to be asking. So we've owned this now a little bit over 6 years, and actually going on 6 years, and you can see what our appraised values are versus what we bought it for and what it recently appraised for. Then I went into some information and showed you a property where we decided we were too smart for the room and got into a property that we thought we'd be really good at, but got out of our area of expertise. We're not good office building owners. It's not what we focus on. It's not our strength. And it shows based on the performance. Okay, it shows based on the performance. And as I said, this is a reason why we don't own any more office buildings. And the funny thing about this property is it's in a good, it's not a bad, what I would say, quote, bad property. So you don't have a bad location. It's not like it's got a whole bunch of problems. It's just the state of the market now. Do you think there's higher demand or lower demand for office space just in general? There's lower demand, right? And is there a lot of office space out there or not very much? There's a lot of it. And so consequently, you don't have the kind of activity and turnover when you have vacant space in an office building as you do an apartment unit. Deer Ridge. So this is one that I wanted to show you that you want to be careful of in your own right. If you're looking at being an active investor or getting involved in a property that needs capital improvements. Okay? And so this was a property we took on that we bought it. We bought it at a discount. So we paid $1,720,000 for it, and it's 46 units. And at the time, a very, very good price. Large 2-bedroom units, 780 square feet, garages. The location's actually nice, just kind of off by the woods. So on the surface, it looked like it'd be a pretty good project. We did our due diligence. We did our math. We figured out how much money it would take to get the property from where it is to where we thought it could be in terms of the rent it could generate, and then in terms of the returns it could give us. Well, this was a property that we undershot our budget big time. So in other words, you've probably heard the story before in other, and maybe other settings are the same. The budget we ran into issues, we ran into problems, the budget started to grow and grow and grow, and we found ourselves a few years later basically saying, you know what, this isn't going to work out like we thought. So rather than continuing to pump money back into it to justify getting it to where we thought it would be and making ourselves feel good, we decided to sell it. We sold it for a loss. We cut our losses and we moved on. This is one that we recently purchased. So this is Wildwood. So we bought this in July of last year. This is 128 units. Location good, very good. Resident mix, I'd say average. And you're looking at the cash flow returns on this property and the overall return. And we just purchased this, like I said, in July. Now here's the interesting thing about this property. So here's like the thing I want to make sure you understand. A lot of people would tell you it always works out this way. I'm going to tell you it doesn't work out this way very often, but when it does, you want to be happy about it. Okay, so here's what I mean. So we bought this property for $6,200,000. We had offers on it right after that, and we still have offers that we could take on it for a little bit over $1 million more than what we paid for it. Okay, a little more than $1 million what we paid for it. And so those situations don't come up very often, even though a lot of people would say, oh yeah, it's easy, we do this all the time. No, that doesn't happen all the time. But this is the kind of properties that we work on to own. Let me just give you a little bit more history about this one because it's instructive. Every property that you've seen so far that I've shown you, and every property you'll see when we start shooting the video, were bought by me contacting the owner constantly and consistently, month after month, year after year. Okay? They weren't put on the market by a real estate broker and we bought them. Okay? It's because the owner finally contacted me and said, okay, Darren, we're finally ready to sell. Let's talk turkey. So Wildwood, the one you've got on your screen, is a great example of that. I spent 25 years contacting the Minkin family that owned this property, that built it in the late 60s. 25 years of contacting, month after month, contacting. Finally, when it came time for them to sell, what did they do? They called me. And that's the reason I do it. Because we will have, and sometimes we'll be fortunate to have a $6 million property that operates great, has good cash flow, good income, and we could sell it for a profit not much later than when we bought it. Again, this is not typical. This is not all of our properties do this, but it's nice to have these when they come up. But the thing that's instructive, I don't want you to miss here, is the worst way to buy an apartment community, guys, is when a broker has it for sale and does what's called a call for offers. Okay? That's the worst way to do it. Because now you're competing with everybody. It's great for the seller, great for them. It's terrible to buy. So the way you want to do it is you want to be the go-to person when they decide, so you don't have to deal with that. You can get a better deal. It's much easier to consummate a deal when you've kind of built that relationship with the owners, and at the end of the day, financially, it works out better. So we spend a hell of a lot of time behind the scenes that you don't see doing exactly this. All right, and so what we've talked about a lot here is cutting edge versus things that don't change. And I want to just hit upon this one more time before we jump into our tour. I just don't want you to miss this. And I like things that don't change. Now, I'm not a progressive guy. I mean, I'm not against being progressive. I am, right? So I'm not, I got an iPhone, you know, I don't use a flip phone or so, but the thing that's interesting is a lot of investors are very, very much interested in finding the next big thing, the next big deal. And there's an old story, it's very, very old, by a guy by the name of Russell Conwell. And Russell Conwell was responsible for raising money, helping raise money to start Temple University. And so he's going around the country giving talks, and he's helping raise money for Temple University. And you're wondering, what the hell does this have to do with things that don't change? I promise I'm getting to it. So his speech is one that's called Acres of Diamonds, and maybe some of you have heard it. And it's basically about the farmer that had a successful farming operation month after month, year after year, had a good life, had a good family, had a good farm, but was always thinking he was missing out on the big payday. Okay? His farm was good. It produced well for him and his family, but he just couldn't stop thinking every night he went to bed that he's missing out on the big payday. There's got to be something big out there. And he kept hearing about diamonds and mining for diamonds, mining for gold. And so he goes ahead and finally decides he's going to leave the farm and go in search of the diamonds and the gold. Leaves the family behind in search of the big treasure. So goes out, searches, and after years and years of toil, work, time, effort, and energy, is unsuccessful, and in a fit of desperation, he decides to kill himself. Okay? Sad story. Back to the farm. So there's a visitor to the farm, and the family still owns the farm, and there's a visitor coming one day, and this is after the poor gentleman kills himself. And as the gentleman's crossing the farm, he crosses a couple creeks and sees these big flashing, the bottom is just flashing like right in his eyes, like the sun in his eyes, but he's looking into the water. So he gets out and he pulls out a big stone about this big out of the creek, takes it into the house. He's meeting with the family and puts it on the table. And he says, "Do you know what this is?" And they're like, "Well, no, it looks like a stone." He says, "I think it's the biggest diamond I've ever seen." So at the end of the day, it turned out to be the biggest diamond mine in the history of that country. It was right in this guy's farm, and it was under his feet the whole time, and he didn't know it. That's kind of what multifamily is, guys, right? Multifamily's been around a long time. Not a lot's changed. We're all pretty familiar with it. Even if you've not invested in it, even you've probably lived in it at some point in time, right? So you've got something right now that is an opportunity, a real big opportunity, at least especially over the next few years. With the amount of demand that there's going to be from tenants, with the amount of coming demand that there will be from investors, it will be a place you will want to make sure you are in, at least somewhat involved, whether you're active or passive. Because remember, just like that old story I just told you, it's probably right under your feet right now. And I would recommend you really think hard about taking advantage of it. And so let's go ahead and we're going to take a 5-minute break and we will start our tour. Don't leave your computers, guys, because we're going to have the tour from your computer. Okay? So don't leave your computer. We're going to take 5 minutes, allow you to maybe go to the bathroom, get a drink, get your water refilled, coffee, maybe get a Diet Coke, whatever, and we'll get started in about 5 minutes. Okay? All right, we'll get the tour started in 5 minutes. All right, guys. So a couple quick things here, and then we're going to get started on the video tour. Number one, I just sent you an email that you should have that has our property catalog in it. So it's a PDF file, and you may want to check your spam too, because sometimes my emails will go into your spam by accident. It will be good for you to have that as we look at the properties today, just to give you a little bit more insight and some notes on some of the properties. The other thing that catalog will have in there is a whole bunch of properties that we're not going to see today. So if we were to tour all of our holdings, it would be, probably another 4 hours at least, and nothing wrong with that. But, what we really want to do here is just to give you at least a really good idea so you can make some informed decisions on, what you may want to do with, with multifamily here in the future. So you should have that. Hopefully you do. And make sure you have that open when we start watching the, we start going through the tour of the properties. Number two, once we're done with the tour, guys, that will be it. I will not be coming back. We will not be basically getting back together again as a group. So once the tour is done, that will be, that'll be it for the Heartland Investment Tour, Property Tour and Summit. And so, again, I invite you to make sure that if you haven't started yet, get some of those questions written down, get some of those things that you think you want to know more about, and then get in touch with me, email, phone, whatever's convenient, and we can have those discussions. What I typically do, just so you know if you were here, is you stay in a hotel. And by the way, I have you in a nice hotel. We stay in a hotel and go through the summit and the tour. And then the next morning we get together and we basically have a strategy session. And it's really kind of pick my brain, talk about some things that you might be thinking of, some possibilities on maybe what you may want to do next, whether you want to kind of do something in your own backyard, whether you want to look at doing something here with us, whatever the case is. That's what we typically do. But since you're not here, we won't do that, but make sure that once you've gone through the information, you've gone through the tour, that if you want to talk turkey, you want to go over some strategy stuff, we can do that. And remember, guys, as part of this, I'm not, and I made kind of a big deal of it during the summit, I'm not here to sell you anything. I mean, I don't care. I mean, you do what you want to do. There's no wrong answers. So there's no obligation in having conversations with me about what you may want to do and how you may want to do it, whether it's with me or not. It's definitely not a problem, and there's no obligation. Okay. So with that said, I want to make sure that we're good as far as participation with who we've got. Let me see here. Okay. So we will get started right now. Okay, so we're going to get started on our property tour here, but first a couple disclaimers before we get started. Okay, number one, this is not a professional filming crew. It's us taking you on a tour. Okay, so there's not going to be a whole bunch of post-production. We don't have producers in the building working on this. We don't have the studio ready to go. I mean, this is raw and relevant, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, it kind of reminds me, you know, you're gonna get this real. So we're not going to take time to pretty things up. We're not going to stop the cameras to make the properties look better. You know, nothing like that's going to happen. And so this may be, it is a real tour. It may be a little unconventional based on maybe some of the more professional things that are out there. But I think it's important to be real with this and show you really what's going on without really doing any kind of work and making ourselves all pretty before we get in front of the video camera. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and let's get started. All right, so we're going to start our first tour stop at the Wildwood Apartments, and the Wildwood Apartments are in Northeast Cedar Rapids. Now, one of the main things, and it is Real Estate 101, is it's all about location, right, that's what it's about. And so this property came up and we purchased it in July of last year. I had it under contract within 3 hours of finding out that this property was available. Okay, the main reason is, number one, location. You got it, so that's number one. But number two, this is the kind of property, based on where it is, based on the kind of residents that we have, is going to be one not only is going to work well in the near term, long term as well. So why don't you go ahead and pan around a little bit, Mal? You can kind of give the folks a little idea. So we're standing basically at the driveway of the entrance, and you can see you got the clubhouse there in the middle, and then you got two other buildings right there. All right. So this is 128 total units, perfect size, and actually our rent collection here right now, as I'm recording this, this is during the COVID-19. Our rent collection here is well over 90%. All right. So that kind of tells you the kind of residents that we have here as well. So let's go ahead and let's go look at it. Let's go ahead and let's go look at an apartment unit. Let's go check out a unit. Let's go. Hey, before we went into a living unit, I just thought we'd kind of get a look at the courtyard. Mal, why don't you pan around here a little bit so they can see the courtyard? So again, you got plenty of parking, you got nice grassy area, and then you're going to notice we've got the swimming pool too. Now, I'm not a guy that thinks you need to have a pool or it's mandatory. It is a nice benefit and amenity for residents. And this is a pool that gets used all of the time. All right, let's go ahead and we'll go through a living unit. All right, let's go ahead and we'll check out an apartment here real quick. So you can keep that rolling if you want.
I'm still rolling. Sorry, I kind of got your foot.
So I do like a lot of units in one place. It really helps with the expense side of things. So think of it this way: if you've got one building with 100 units versus 10 buildings with 10 units, your maintenance, your expenses, your overall overhead goes down dramatically. That's one thing that I like about this place. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at a 2-bedroom. This unit is in the process of being turned over, so it's a good time to see it. It's not totally ready to go, but it's about 90% there. So what you're going to see here is you're going to see a unit that's about 750, 760 square feet. Like I said, 2-bedroom. Now this rents for $720 a month. Now included in the $720 in this property anyway, in this unit, is their heat and their water. So they pay $720, they pay their own electricity in addition to that, but everything else, garbage, heat, water, is included in that. And one of the nice things about Heartland of America rents, by the way, are the price points. So this unit, a comparable unit in larger cities, larger metropolitan areas would easily be renting for double this, which, you know, some things are relative, of course, but it also explains the reason why our collection rates are so good is we have price points that are, that are pretty darn affordable. And at the same time, at the end of the day, from an ownership standpoint, it makes sense financially too. So again, so why don't you pan around here in the living room now? So this is, large living room and kitchen area, and we're kind of standing in the back of that. And then we'll go ahead and why don't you walk with me through the kitchen. So our typical deal is we'll typically put carpet down in the living room areas, and then the kitchen areas get a vinyl plank, like this one right here. So you got vinyl planking, stove, sink. Now you're going to notice that this doesn't have, put that up there a little bit.
Sorry.
This doesn't have a dishwasher. It doesn't have all those other amenities, but again, with our price points, you really don't need to have that. So you basically got big kitchen sink, you get electric stove, refrigerator. In the kitchen, you got a little storage closet there, a little pantry, right? So you can close that now if you want. Walk down the hallway here, and you'll see the bedrooms, and you'll see how large these bedrooms are. All right, so here's bedroom number 1. So this is bedrooms about 12 by 10, just to give you an idea. And then you've got the closet there, so you've got plenty of closet space there as well. In this 12 by 10 bedroom. Yeah, it's a pretty good size. Now we'll go over here. Closet. Little linen closet there, right? Bathroom. Okay, and nothing special in here. You got your sink and vanity, you got your mirror there. Why don't you go ahead and just come in here, just take a quick look at the shower. So you've got the shower. Again, nothing fancy, nothing out of the ordinary. We've got the tile floor in the bathroom. Once you focus on the floor there, get my boots, right? We got the tile there. And then you've got our other large bedroom here. This is a big one. This one's pretty close to about 14-ish by 10, so this is pretty good size. You can tell I'm way back here. Keep going back. Keep going back, keep going back, keep going. So right there, that's a long way. So that's about 14 by 10. And you notice you got the air conditioning unit in the bedroom here, right? So you got your closet. You've got the other bedroom here, which we already looked at. Then of course you've got another AC unit right here. So we got 2 cooling units in a 2-bedroom apartment, which actually nowadays you don't really see much anymore, but is the case here. Okay. So our turnover time on this is usually about, by the time it's ready, by the time the resident moves out, by the time we do what we need to do for turnover, by the time it's on the market, we're usually around 1.5 to 2 weeks, and then maybe another week or so until it's rented to, of course, qualified resident, hopefully, right? Okay, so that's it for property number 1, Wildwood Apartments. If you want to go online, check out the website. That's cool. Take a little bit deep dive into Wildwood Apartments. You just go Wildwood Apartments, Cedar Rapids. You'll see the website there, other floor plans, everything else. You're going to check that out too. 128 units. I didn't give you a unit breakdown. So we've got 23 bedroom, we've got 62 bedroom, and so you got about another 48 units, which are 1 bedroom or studio units. So quite a nice mix of studio 1s, 2s, and 3 bedrooms. Okay. So before we go though, let's take a look at 2 more. We'll take a look at one more thing. Actually, maybe 2 more. One, we'll kind of look at the laundry area, just give you guys an idea what the laundry areas look like. And then we'll kind of give you a backdrop of this property too, which is kind of unique. So let's go ahead and let's do that. All right, one of the things I wanted to show you is I get this question a lot. Amenities, like, Darren, what do you guys do for laundry? What do you do for, like vending machines? So this gives you an idea kind of what we do. So we're down in our laundry room. Al, if you want to kind of pan around it, you can see we got the pop machine there. And we lease these, we don't own these. And I'll tell you why we do that in just a second. Laundry machines, though, we like to own. Leasing them is not a bad option. If you have large size apartment property, it's not bad. So these units we do lease, but we're also open to owning our own laundry machine. too. And that just kind of depends on property by property whether or not we do that. Because usually if you lease machines instead of owning, you split those profits with the leasing company, you know, the quarters. But these, as you can see, you can actually pay with an app. You can download an app and pay from your phone. And then what happens is when your laundry's done, it actually goes to your phone and says, hey, your laundry's done, which is actually kind of cool. So by the time we were to buy these kinds of machines, financially just made sense to lease them when you've got those kinds of things that the machines do. Of course, you got washing machines back there too. A little place for the residents to kind of sit down and wait to get their laundry done. And regarding things like pop machines, I'm of the mindset that we lease these, we don't own them, because I don't want to be in the beverage business. You know, so I don't want to have to worry about stocking it, finding the best deal, make sure that camera's.
It is.
You know, I don't want to be finding the best deal on pop. You know, I don't want to be having people do that. I'd rather have somebody else worry about that, maybe get whatever residual we get out of that. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and let's go upstairs. All right, so why don't you come back here? I want to show you something here real quick. We're still at Wildwood, but I wanted to show you guys something I forgot about earlier. Come on back here. So we've got this little area back here. If the residents want to come back here, relax, sit back here, that's cool. Then also we're backed up to a golf course, which is kind of nice. So you want to pan through that now, you certainly can. So you backed up to a golf course. Residents gonna kind of come back here, take it easy, relax a little bit, maybe watch the watch the folks playing 18. Do that. But this is the kind of setting in town, location. You back up to a golf course. This is the kind of reasons why this is a property that we don't. You know, I spent less than 2 hours even thinking about before we grabbed it and were able to purchase it. So. I think that's going to wrap it up for Wildwood. So why don't we head over to our next property? All right, so right now we're driving from Wildwood. We're going over to a 60-unit property by the name of Glenbrook Center. And usually if you were here in person, what you would be seeing, actually I wouldn't be driving. We'd have basically a big white van. Yeah, the stereotypical big white van. With windows, and we'd have that full of full of either current partners or investors checking everything out. And one thing that you will miss a little bit on this virtual tour are some of the nuances regarding the community, either Cedar Rapids or Marion, where the properties are located in relation to maybe retail, resident amenities, those kinds of things. So you miss out on that a little bit. But the important thing really is getting a good look at the properties, the reasons why they're properties that we want to own, and why we think they're not only good for investment in the short term, but also good long-term assets, especially through times of economic decline, that we're seeing right now as I'm shooting this, during the pandemic. I mean, this is where a lot of investors, and I guess I shouldn't say a lot, that's not really accurate, where investors that think outside of the box a little bit, they for lack of a better way of describing it, it's a place to stash their cash. This is where they put their money and park it, not only for the reasons of rates of return and those kinds of things, but also during times when the shit hits the fan, like is happening during the time that we're recording this. It's still a good place to go. You can go ahead and cut that off if you want. Okay, so now we're pulling into Glenbrook Center, and you can see you've got the leasing office and the retail there. And then we're going to pull in. We're going to grab keys from our resident manager here. and then we're going to go look at some units. Okay, so again, we're at Glenbrook right now, and why don't you pan around here a little bit, Mel? You're going to kind of see the layout. See the buildings in the back. It's 60 total units. The building you're looking at right now, you've got apartments above and retail below. And then keep going around, Mel, because I want to show them this vacant lot here. And so when we bought it, we also bought this vacant lot here. Why don't you just freeze right there for just a second. So this lot was really purchased for maybe some future development, and it came with the property. So when we bought this property, we paid a little bit over $2 million for it. So that would have been early 2016. Okay, early 2016. It recently appraised for a little bit over $4 million. Now, we put some money into it. We borrowed some money to really get the units from where they were to where we wanted them to be, but substantial increase in value, right? And so you can see the traffic. Go ahead and get the traffic there. This is First Avenue right now, and this is one of the busier roads through Cedar Rapids. So at some point in time, we're going to do some developing here, whether it's either more apartments or possibly some retail. But we've got that, and it was included with the property, so it's nothing but some good upside for us there. And then go ahead and go back to the apartments. So just to give you guys an idea what we did here, when we bought these in 2016, we went in, and over a year's period of time, a little more than a year, we gutted every unit and we refurbished every unit. So we were the second owners of this property. It was built in the early 70s. And so every single unit looked just like 1972. That's what it looked like, okay? Now, location is top notch. So even with the amenities not that great in terms of age of the building, I'll tell you what, because of the location, no problem with keeping it occupied. But we knew we had some capability in those rent levels and getting them from where they were to where we thought they could be after we put the investment into the property. So what you see here, and you'll see some units in a second, is we kind of did the painting. There's a retail and office below there, and then the units up above, and went through the whole process. And that process, we went from, think about taking over 60 units. You get all the tenants out, which takes a long time. You go in, you finish all the units, you fill it all back up. I mean, you're probably a year and a half, 18 months. And that's if you're doing things well, without any delays, Murphy's Law stuff coming up, or problems. And so here we are at the end of this road, and this is the kind of project that we got, and it's going to be a great long-term project for us and those guys that are involved in it with us too. So let's go ahead and let's go look at a couple of living units. All right, why don't you come on into this unit? I'll give you kind of an idea what's going on here. So again, as I said, this is a little bit different from most of our units where we went in and we upgraded every single unit. And that's not the case with all of our stuff, but with this one, we did. And so, Mel, why don't you kind of pan around a little bit and I'll talk about what we've done. Go ahead and take your time. So we've got the new plank flooring in here. We did that. Everything from the trim to the walls to the fixtures. And by walls, we didn't put new walls in, but we made some changes to the texture and the paint. Countertops, the appliances back there, all changed out. And, you know, we've got these, this is a one-bedroom unit that we're in, by the way. One bedroom. So you've got the nice countertops here. You got the cabinets, the new cabinets that, you know, close on their own. Very nice. You got the backsplash to give it a nice accent. You got the upgraded appliances. They're not the steel, you know, what's the look? Not steel.
Stainless steel.
Stainless, is that what they call them?
Yeah, stainless
steel. You
steel.
don't have those, but they're nice and upgraded appliances. Again, the cabinets, the countertops. And then you come into the bedroom here. Obviously, you got your new cooling unit. Really good sized bedroom. Plenty of closet space. Again, basically everything is a couple of years old. Fixtures, doors. And then go ahead and I'll let you go back there and kind of take a look at the bathroom area there off the bedroom. You've got your vanity and your bathroom. I mean, nothing real significant. A bathroom's a bathroom, shower, but you know, the tub surround is new, toilet of course new, and you know, same with the sink and vanity here. And again, you know, we've got the self-closing doors there. So So this is what we've done with every single unit here. Now with a lot of our properties, we'll go in and we'll do this kind of stuff, but we do it gradually over time as residents turn over. This was a little bit different in as much as we thought it made financial sense to basically evacuate most of the residents, put all the money into it right away, then lease it out versus do it over time because of the amount of equity we thought we could gain, and we were right about that. So so I'll go ahead and we'll shut these off, and let's go ahead and we'll go to another unit. All right, so why don't you follow me through the courtyard here? I thought, we're going to go look at another living unit. We're still at Glenbrook. And now why don't you pan around here and get an idea what the interior of this courtyard looks like. So this is for the residents to come out, hang out. If they want to grill some food or just enjoy the weather, they can certainly do that. And we like to keep our courtyard areas looking nice and clean. We want it to be as presentable as possible. So to give residents reason to come out and hang out here too. So you got the nice little fountain there in the middle, which is kind of nice.
Yes.
All right, we'll look at another unit here. It's got a little bit different layout. I thought it'd be kind of interesting to check it out. So turn a few lights on here. Come on in now. So why don't you back up to the door here, and you can pan around and see. So we've got a little bit bigger kitchen area here. So this is a 1-bedroom. It's another floor plan we've got here, but you see the kitchen's a little bit larger. You're going to notice the same kind of cabinets, same kind of appliances, still the same counters, everything else, backsplash is still the same. Then you got a dishwasher in here too. So you still got some of the same things here, except you get a little bit bigger. And then go ahead, you got some windows there too. Why don't you pan over there now? Yeah, so you see you got some windows there, so a little more light coming in. And then you can come back here and we've got we've got kind of the barn doors there that kind of separate the space from the bedroom, which is kind of cool. Make sure that's up there so you can see me. And come on back there, Mom. And this gives you kind of an idea what the bedroom looks like. So go ahead and pan around and you get a look at the bedroom. I mean, I don't think we need to open closets for the folks watching the tour, but we'll do that anyway. So you've got nice closet space in this 1-bedroom unit. And then again, bathroom is a bathroom. Why don't you take a quick look at that? But everything else was changed out here, of course. Shower's a shower. Right there, that's just the power room. That's where, open it up. That's okay, open it up. They can see that. So, you got your breaker box here. We're going to get mechanical. We're getting mechanical here. So go ahead, just go ahead and look both ways now. Go ahead here to bring the camera in. To your left there, to your right. Oh, you're going to the right.
Sorry.
So get over there. Let's see here. Get that in there. So that's a furnace. Okay? Now go over to your left. That's a water heater. Okay, so in these units, the residents pay their own hot water. They pay their own heat. They pay their own electric. And the owners pay the water, sewage, and garbage. And that's built into the rent. Okay, so it's not a big deal for them to kind of check out and see the power plant in there.
I haven't seen this layout before.
Yeah, no, not a problem. Yeah, so this is the other style of our 1-bedrooms. And of course, you kind of seeing what the units look like. It's not a surprise that they rent up pretty quickly. All right. Okay, that is going to wrap up our quick tour of Glenbrook. So far we've seen Wildwood, which is 128 units. We've been to Glenbrook, which is 60 units, plus the retail, plus that vacant lot out there that we looked at. And let's go ahead, we're going to go ahead now over to Forest Ridge, which is our 168 unit project. So let's go over there right now. All right, so we're on our way to Forest Ridge right now, which is 168 units. We're going to go check that out, walk around there a little bit. And I thought what I'd do while we're driving is just to answer a question that I've been getting a lot of, either phone calls from current investors or partners of ours, or investors and folks kind of thinking about whether they should be getting into the real estate investment game right now. And let me just summarize this by telling you really two things. It's just my opinion. So number one, if there's any asset class to be in, this is the asset class to be in. A lot of folks are wondering, will tenants pay rent? Is there going to be issues with collections of rent? And I can tell you that the media has done a fantastic job of blowing all of that way out of proportion. And that's not to say across the board every single one of our residents have paid and paid on time, but we're well over 90%. So, the media is saying it's 30, 40%, and property values are going to decline, and there's going to be all sorts of problems. Always remember, money is made in media by bad news. Eyeballs and ears go to bad news. They don't necessarily go to good news. And that's not to say apartments and multifamily is perfect. It's just to say I think it's the asset class to be in. So that's number one. I get that question a lot. Should I be involved in multifamily right now? Should I be investing more? Should I be putting some money in a multifamily property? Just in general, depending on the property and the project and the opportunity, the answer is yeah. So that's number one. Number two, the other thing to be thinking about here is this. A lot of the success that we have with our multifamily holdings is really about the management systems and the processes that we currently have in place. And so, again, we're not perfect, but we do a really good job. I read this morning in the Wall Street Journal, again, we're recording this April 22nd of 2020, that some of the largest private equity funds right now are having trouble keeping investors away from investing, away from putting money into their funds. They're telling people no. They're turning people down right now at a time like this. Why do you think that's the case? Well, that's the case because they know there will be real estate opportunities coming up that they'll be able to buy at a substantial discount. So the opportunities coming up, especially in multifamily, to buy properties at a discount is going to be even bigger than what we saw in the real estate crash in 2007 and 2009. It'll be bigger than Resolution Trust Corporation. It will be huge. Why? Because there are, unfortunately, a lot of folks that own multifamily that are not very good at management. They're not very good with their processes, with their communication with their residents. And right now, they have problems. They have big problems. And so you will see those kinds of assets coming on the market that will be available, that will be able to be purchased at a substantial discount. That's just the way it's going to be. And I don't ever wish ill on anybody, but the fact of the matter is that's the deal. So what are we doing about it? What's Darren doing about it? We are gathering as much capital as we can as well, because we're going to play the same game. So I am working tirelessly with our current investors, new partners, lines of credit, millions and millions of dollars of lines of credit from our lenders that are being teed up and ready to go in order to be able to capitalize on the opportunity that's in front of us. And so those two questions I have mainly received now over the last 4 to 5 weeks. Is multifamily a good place to be in now? The answer is yes. Will it be a good place to be in the future? And I think I've pretty much have described how I feel about that. So, all right, so we are now at the Forest Ridge Apartments, 168 units total, consisting of about 102 one-bedrooms and the rest either 2-bedroom, 1-bath or 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. So Mal, why don't you kind of pan around here a little bit? Yeah, go that way. You can kind of see we've got the office clubhouse right there, first of all. And then you're going to see we have 11 separate buildings around the property. Each of the buildings are either 12-unit or 24-unit buildings. Go ahead and take your time as you go around there so they can see. There you go. more over here. You guys see behind me, you got a little different colored brick there. But it includes that as well. I'll let you come all the way around. All right, looking good, looking good. So yeah, so this is 168 units, location Northeast Cedar Rapids, close to basically almost every tenant convenience you could want. Bike trails, you're just minutes from downtown, all the activity there. The main arterial through Cedar Rapids is called Interstate 380. You're basically a minute from that. So to be able to live here and then make any kind of changes in terms of with either what residents are doing or what they've got going on, the location is actually very, very good in relationship to that. Okay, so let's go take a look at the living unit. All right, so one of the things we've got at this property that's a little bit unique as compared to some of our other holdings, not so much that it's unique that we have its own separate clubhouse for the residents to use and for management and of course all the administrative things, but we also have kind of a recreation area too what the residents can use for parties, get-togethers, meetings, gatherings, those kinds of things. So Matt, why don't you step in here for just a second and just kind of pan around here a little bit, just to give you guys kind of an idea, you know, what the place looks like. You got the big screen TV, you got the fireplace over there, of course you got the tables and chairs over here they can hang out in. And then why don't you walk over here real quick and just get an idea of what the kitchen looks like here. So you've got your own kitchen for the residents to use too if they want to. No bar area there, that's kind of nice. Yeah. So again, you don't see this in a lot of communities. There's a few of them, but because of the date that this property was built, this was built in the late 70s, what you'll find with cost of construction is it actually made sense from a construction cost standpoint in the late 70s to put this kind of money in extra amenities like a clubhouse, just because obviously costs of construction were a lot less back then, but also the rent structure also was able to support those kinds of costs being put in at that time. Now it's a lot harder if you were to build a community today to have this kind of space, this kind of square footage, this kind of construction, just because of what the construction cost would be. And so let's go ahead and we'll go down to the, we'll go down and check out the, what do I want to say? Not gym, what do I want to say? What's
Workout room, fitness center.
This is fitness center, thank you. Let's go check that out.
You're welcome. That's my PE health degree at your service. I'm guessing no one's allowed to use this right now.
Okay, so come on in. So we've got the fitness center. So go ahead and pan around here now. You get an idea what the fitness center looks like. Nothing fancy. Got a couple treadmills, got a bike, weight machine there. You got dumbbells. These are my dumbbells right here, 100-pound dumbbells. You know, holy crap. I'd like to see somebody be able to lift those and rock over those. So we've got the fitness center. We've got nice lighting in here, and then you've got the restroom areas. Now, why am I going to show you a restroom? I'll tell you why I'm going to show you a restroom again. This is indicative of properties built in late 70s and early 80s. Tough to find this going on in 2020. But again, the tenants love these amenities. Come on in, I'll show you. So yeah, this is a restroom. What's the big deal, right? Restroom, fitness area with showers. So go ahead and take a look at the showers there. So you don't see that very often in apartment communities anymore. And a sauna. So the residents can also use a sauna. Again, just indicative of the time this was built. Properties now, they're not built with these kinds of things. So the residents love it. And the cool thing about these kind of properties, let's go out here so it's not so noisy. So the cool thing about it is when you invest in and buy a property like this, and you invest, let's say, $35,000, $40,000 a unit, and you own something like this, you can be able to charge rents in the 2-bedroom area of $650, $750, and still have a very, very good cash flow and provide these kinds of amenities. So you compare this with, say, new construction. So if this was newly constructed, you'd have to get double the rent that we get for our units now, at least as a minimum, just to pay your overhead because the construction costs would be so high. So that's one reason why I like properties that are already constructed, already built. We can pick up for $35,000, $40,000-ish a unit, and they provide these kinds of amenities. All right, let's go take a look at a living unit. Okay, so all of the units here, secure entrance, so you need a key to get in. So we will do that. Here we go. Here's a cool thing. Everybody is pretty much working from home right now. Do you hear any noise? Nothing, right? Pretty cool. All right, so this one is one of our 2-bedroom, bath and a half units. And you're gonna notice right away, why don't you back up by the door there, Mel, how freaking big these are. Look where I'm at. Okay, so this right here is the living room. Living room is about 14 by 10, just the living room. Okay, now, I know I didn't hit the light, but now I'm kind of in the kitchen area, table, chairs, in this area. Okay? Come over here now.
Doesn't work.
Why don't you get a look at the kitchen? So you got the galley style kitchen. So yeah, you do sacrifice a little kitchen room. You don't have a ton of counter space or cabinet space, admittedly. Of course, you got your typical appliance, dishwasher, refrigerator, stove, right? Nothing fancy. Again, it does kind of look like it was built in the 70s, but still in really good shape. But the thing that properties, again, this age give you is freaking square footage. Square footage, okay? So this unit right here rents for about $750 a month. Think about that. And it's about 810 square feet. Come back here, I'll show you this. So nothing fancy here. Go ahead and take a look at the bathroom there real quick. It's a typical bathroom, right? One thing I find kind of interesting, why don't you show this here? I don't know why you need a phone jack in your bathroom above your toilet, but evidently when they built it, that was a thing. So, you know, anyway, kind of outdated anymore, but still kind of funny. So, but then you want to look at the size of these bedrooms. So here's bedroom number 1. This is about 12 by 10. Again, huge. Why don't you come in and take a quick peek at the closet there, Mel? See that? Yeah, and of course, great shape. Built in the late 70s, but holy cow. Look what kind of condition it's in. Really nice. Then you come into bedroom number 2. Look at the size of this girl. This is 14 by 12. Look how big it is. 2 sets of closets. Look at that. Right? And a half bath. So I'll hit the light here. Go ahead and take a peek in there. Now you've got, you know, nothing fancy. You got a shower stall. You got your vanity there, your bathroom vanity and toilet. Whoops, sorry about that. But again, half bath, big bedroom, another big bedroom, square footage. That's what these kind of properties give you. And tenants will, people will pay for the square footage. So this kind of property right here, this square footage, so we're renting this right now, I want to say $750, $775-ish. The residents have to pay their own electricity and their own gas. Okay, gas for heat, mainly heat, that's really about it. Oh, excuse me, heat and hot water. That's what your gas bill is for. Electricity, owners, we pay water, sewage, garbage, common area lights, we do the lawn mowing, snow removal, those kinds of things. Okay, so if you were to build this in new construction, and I'm not necessarily picking on new construction day, but this, you'd have to rent this for $1,500, $1,600 a month. Okay. And just, again, to make the numbers kind of make sense. Again, this is why most of what you've seen so far that we own has been heavy on location, has been heavy on size and square footage,
and has been heavy on age that we purchased them. Again, we're not looking for old buildings, but when we can buy properties like this for $35,000, $40,000 a unit, you've already got the kind of financials, income, returns kind of baked into that. And it's a place that's not really that difficult to rent because of its size. So, let's go.
Do you want me to stop or keep going?
Oh, keep going. All right, and the
Don't you
last
pay
thing,
for
we got,
Wi-Fi
everyone's
here?
got a deck. What's that?
Don't you pay for Wi-Fi here too?
We do pay for Wi-Fi here too. That is included in here too, in the rent too. Thank you, Mel. Mel's right about that. We do pay for Wi-Fi here too. Then you've got a deck along with it. Can you see out there okay?
Mm-hmm.
On the deck? Yeah. So not only that, you got a deck you can sit on. Okay? Here's the other thing about a property like this. One word, resale. Resale. Do you think it would be hard for us to sell this property if and when we wanted to? Probably not. Probably not. And that's actually the first thing that we think about, the first thing that I think about when we look at purchasing properties. Okay, how are we going to be able to sell it? What are we going to be able to sell it for? And will we have a nice large audience interested? And this checks all the boxes. All right? So far, we've seen Wildwood, 128 units. We've seen Glenbrook, 60 units.
Can't see your face. Go over here.
Okay.
Start
Now,
over.
right there?
Yeah, just because
Okay,
of some.
so far we've seen Wildwood, 128 units. We've seen Glenbrook, 60 units. We've seen Forest Ridge, 168 units. Again, remember, this is usually from big white van, windows. Once in a while we get out and kind of tour some things. Sometimes we just drive by and check them out. So we're going to go one more property just to give you an idea of something that's maybe a little newer. We're going to go to a property that's 72 units that we own and one that's 48 units. They're side by side, so that's what, 120 units, I think, if I do the math right. So 120 units that were built in the 90s and in the 2000s. We're going to go take a look at those right now. Right, let's go. Okay, we are now at Raintree. Raintree. This is 72 units. Okay, this property built in 1994. So again, not that new, but a lot newer than what we're typically used to. But again, this is a property that we purchased for a little bit less than $40,000 per unit. Out of the 72 units, you've got all 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units, with the exception of, I believe, 8, and those are 1-bedroom units. Okay. Plus you've got garages. So Mal, why don't you kind of pan around a little bit, and then you can kind of see the property here. So you see the garages over there. And then you can kind of see the property as you go down through the parking lot. More garages down there. And then you can see the living units here on the left side. All right? And then why don't you come around here. So you're going to see quite a bit of traffic. Go ahead and pan around this way too, Mel. You see quite a bit of traffic here. So again, location. We're off of one of the main arterials in southwest Cedar Rapids. And you can see the traffic just buzzing by, right now, and close to shopping, restaurants, tenant conveniences. I mean, all of that kind of stuff. So this is the kind of property that you want to own. And again, occupancy-wise, we're over 90%. Rent collection, we're over 90%. Okay. So again, why don't you go ahead and pan down here. Each of the units got their own balconies. They've got heat, central air. Residents get a garage, which of course they love. And location, very, very good. All right, let's go ahead and let's go check out a living unit. So this is the office at Raintree, and so why don't you just go ahead, Mal, and just pan around there if you want. No, go this way. Go this way. Start over there. There you go. So you can see, all the stuff for the residents to get, information, bulletin boards posted. And here's our manager's office. This is where Jane is at, and our staff, they're inside that office, so they got a window to see out here. Occupancy standard information, and then floor plan information. And a lot of this is mainly, for the walk-ins that come in. walk-ins come in, we've got that information right there for them to look at while they're waiting to speak with Jane. So the important thing about a management office is to have the place looking nice and professional, because environment matters a lot. And so walking into a place that's clean, it's well kept, it's got good information, easy to access information as well. Got our bulletin board information here too. And then, table there to take care of any overflow if we've got lease signings, those kinds of things. And then kitchen, also available as well too. So again, this is open every day, not take it back, not every day, but Monday through Friday, basically 9 to 4. And then weekends typically by appointment. All right, so why don't we go take a look at the living room? All right, this is 2-bedroom, come on in now. 2-bedroom at Raintree. So why don't you, the first thing again is the size. So what we like to do with our flooring when we replace it is, this is an LVP, this is a vinyl plank. So when we turn units over and the flooring needs to be replaced, this is typically what our go-to is now, just because wear and tear lasts a little bit longer and it doesn't cost that much more than carpeting does. So we get a little bit longer life out of that. So of course you got the deck off the unit here. The residents can use, sit there and hang out outside in the nice weather. You got the kitchen area. Again, remember, square footage is a big deal for me. Looking at units, so far, pretty big, pretty good size, go all the way back now. So we're about 16 feet here. In terms of living room area, the kitchen, you got separate dining area here. Then you got your kitchen area, come on back here, Mel. And again, this was built in the mid-90s, so nothing real fancy. You got your appliances, stove, dishwasher, refrigerator. And then you've got a pantry, closet. You can go ahead and just put your camera in here real quick so you can get an idea what the pantry looks like. So I've got a closet, pantry in there. And then go to your right there too, Mel. So there's your furnace and your water heater. So the residents pay to heat the water. Residents pay to heat their unit. Go on to there, and then let's go back and look at some bedrooms. Should we do that? Again, you got the vinyl plank through the hallway, but then we do put the carpet in the bedroom. Why don't you walk in there, Mel, and just kind of pan around in there, and they'll get a good idea. There's bedroom number 1. It's about 12 by 10. There you go. Go ahead and you can hit the ceiling fan there. So we've got the ceiling fan in here too going. Window to the outside. You can come out of there if you want. Bathroom, nothing fancy. Vanity, tub shower combo, toilet. Got a closet for linens. Put your camera up so it's on me. Put your closet up for the linens there. Then you've got bedroom number 2, which is absolutely huge. You stand right there, and I'll kind of go back here so they can get an idea how big it is. Yeah, so this is about 14 by 10. Very good sized bedroom. So again, this is a 2-bedroom unit. This unit rents for $725 a month. And then you've got a big walk-in closet here. Right? Yeah. So again, when you're able to buy these for $40,000-ish a unit, some a little more, a little bit less, and you're able to get these kind of rent prices for this kind of vintage and the location makes sense, this is the kind of stuff we want to own. And this property's been great ever since we bought this in 2014. So, geez, it's been 6 years already. So this has been a great project for us. All right, so we have looked at, we've got one property left. So we've looked at Wildwood, we looked at Forest Ridge, we looked at Glenbrook, we've looked at Raintree. One more left, we're going to go to Jacqueline Corner. So let's head over there right now. Oh, our last stop on the tour is a 48-unit property by the name of Jacqueline Corner Apartments. And so this is actually one of the simpler properties that we own. And by that I mean we have 4 12-unit buildings. Mal, why don't you go ahead and start panning around here so people can see. It doesn't matter which way, whichever way you want to go. And every unit is the same in terms of floor plan. You're going to see the 412 unit buildings as Mal pans around with the camera. Each unit has a garage, so you're going to see the garages there as well. It's included in the rent. So you got 2-bedroom, 1-bath units with deck or patio, and it also has a gas fireplace that the residents can use too, and we'll show you that here in just a little bit. So the price point, the rents on these are anywhere from $775-ish to $775 to $800 a month, and the residents pay all utilities here. So that's gas, electric, and water. We as the owners pay the common area lights, lawn care, snow removal, garbage removal too, but the residents pay that. Again, location, this is basically right next to Raintree. Raintree is basically on the other side of that building there, pretty much. And so management-wise, we've got things centralized. We run the operations out of this property from Raintree. So when people want to rent here, we got residents that have things that come up, whatever they may be. Raintree's where they go, and that's where they contact our staff, whether it's our office staff or our maintenance staff there too. Garages are included in the rents here, included with every unit as well. All the garages have their own garage door openers too. Okay, let's go take a look at the unit. All right, come on in here. This is the 2-bedroom units that we have here at Jacqueline Corner. I'll just kind of do a walk around. Why don't you just follow me with the camera on this one now? So let's start by going to the kitchen area. First of all, you're going to notice the LVP flooring that we talked about before. Why don't you show that real quick? So this is a little bit different color, but this is what we like to do throughout, like I said, living room, kitchen. Why don't you go to the kitchen there real quick? And then we'll show the bedrooms here in just a second. So when you first walk in, get your nice coat closet. Then this property, this unit, unlike a lot of others, this comes with a washer and dryer. Why don't you come here and check that out? So they each have their own stackable washer and dryer to use in the unit. There's no coin-operated washers and dryers in the place. Typical stove, microwave, refrigerator, dishwasher, no surprise there. You've got the vaulted ceilings. I want to show the ceiling there now with the ceiling fan there. So you got the vaulted ceilings. You've got your gas fireplace, you know, when it gets nice and chilly in those Iowa winters. Got your gas fireplace to use. Why don't you take a look at the deck there. Roomy deck too, by the way. Those decks are about 10 by 12. So they're not just tiny decks, they're actually really, really good size. Another closet right here. And then you've got your bathroom. Again, nothing fancy. Come on in, Mel. You can go ahead and take a look at the kitchen, toilet, tubs around. I mean, did I say kitchen?
Yeah.
So you got sink, vanity, tubs around there. Yeah, and then you got the bedroom. So these are nice sized bedrooms. So this is about 12 by 10. Of course, you got carpet in the bedrooms. You can see me back here. How you doing? Why don't you come in and take a look at the closet, because I think that what's nice about these units is you got some really good closet space. So you got some sizable closet space there. And then you've got the larger bedroom, which is about 14 by 12. Pretty big size, you can tell by one way back here. And then why don't you take a look at the closet there. Yeah. So again, these are 48 units just like this. The rental point's $775 to $800 a month, depending on where the residents are in their leases. Residents pay all utilities. These are only units that actually come with washer and dryer. And they pay, of course, a little bit more rent in that, and they pay all the utilities too, water, sewage, and electricity and gas. And so we have gone over, during our property tour today, we've hit, what, 5 properties, I think? Mm-hmm. 5 properties. And so, you know, we have over 1,000 units, ranging anywhere from our smallest is a 4-unit property. You know, our largest is the Forest Ridge property, which is 168 units, and kind of all sizes in between there. So this was really designed, this virtual tour, to give you, an idea about what's going on here, what we've got, why investors are involved with us, why they want to continue to be involved with us, what our partners own, and and the assets that they have. And so it's been quite a multifamily investment summit, pretty much. And so we'll end this part of the tour. We'll go back to the presentation part for just a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and we'll finish it out.